welcome, thank you for coming, thank you for coming. Folks want to come to the table, feel free. We do not have
Come on up.
speakers coming tonight.
We do. We have one, Rich McCarthy.
Rich,
He's our
okay.
town planner.
But prior to this, we were.
We were
right.
going to have Ann Proto
But
come,
you
but
sent
there
us
was
the
a
email.
conflict.
Right, understood.
And so, Dave Lutz should be coming soon.
Okay.
And he said he did see her
Yes, I can do
presentation last night, so he would be happy to speak to it if we needed, if anyone had any more questions.
Now, I'm looking at the spreadsheet with the green
With the new numbers.
bar
so that
across the top, right, so.
Right. So Rich is here tonight to speak about article numbers 1
The zoning,
to 9, Rich, is that correct? Or the,
Yeah, tonight. I
Okay.
think that's where we're at. Yeah.
10?
10?
We
10.
have to motion to call to order.
oh, interesting.
Oh, here's Dave.
10.
So these are all the zoning.
Understood. In terms of calling meeting to order, I just do that.
You
in the
might
bottom,
have to
I
put
do.
that somewhere else.
I just
You
call
don't
it
usually
order.
want to sit.
So I call the meeting to order. Welcome, clerk, please do.
Yeah.
Please join us. I noticed that we seem to have all the zoning district issues up front, but the other bylaws are at the end. Okay. So, can you walk us through, thanks for joining us. Can you
Sure.
walk us through articles, starting with Article 1, the building scale? Do we have questions or concerns?
All right, well, good evening. Richard McCarthy, Norfolk Town Planner. I'll walk through some of the proposed zoning articles for town meeting. If we've had an ongoing study started back in February with a group of local committee, the committee mixed of planning board, board of selectmen representatives, zoning board of appeals. Steve McDonough was the rep from the advisory board before on the committee, the board of health, and then a couple of citizens at large. So we've been working, looking at Norfolk Town Center zoning bylaws and potential ways to hopefully move forward and further on creating some of the town center vision the town has had over the years. So we had online surveys, maybe some of you participated in, some of the questioning that was asked about preferences and uses and buildings and so forth. There was a community meeting back in April. We've had several B1 committee meetings with the planning board. We had a final, if you will, September 12th, there was a meeting at the Freeman Kennedy to talk about some of the findings and some recommendations. Drafting language happened after that. We've gone through a few reiterations of the bylaws, so before you is what's being brought forward right now. I'm not going to talk about the things that dropped out just to make it a little bit easier, so you'll just be looking at what. So Article 1 is, so anything we refer to Section I as we go through there is the zoning related to the B1 district. Through the process of doing the planning effort, the issue of having limitations relative to building footprint size became something of a potential issue for larger sites. If you want to try to develop smaller developments, smaller properties, that footprint limitation at least was identified as a potential barrier to try to realize some different developments. Now, the concern that's been raised through the hearing that was held on the 28th from the planning board last night, selectmen's meeting, you probably heard a recap of it, is that this would essentially remove that size limitation on the footprint of the building. Not talking about vertical, it's just the footprint. And then secondarily, what this does do, actually, the town had a vision, as you know, there was potentially going to be the super Stop and Shop in the center of town, which didn't come to fruition. So originally there was this, capping of how big a grocery store and variety store was more related to that of the 50,000 square feet. Since the time that hasn't happened, and as we've progressed along, I think the vision for people has kind of shifted a little bit. Still to have a grocery store, but something that's scaled more for a downtown, not necessarily a superstore that would be more, found on the highway, not even necessarily 1A per se, but more Route 1, et cetera. So the thought being to put a cap on it to really send the messaging that we were looking for a smaller grocery store for the center of town at some point in time. Now, there's a bunch of economics that probably we will not see something happen that way, because there's a present long-term lease on the property that Stop and Shop has, and it's fairly expensive to try to buy out of it, but nevertheless, hopefully this sends a message like what we're trying to attract. So that's the purpose of the first article here. As I mentioned, I'm going to use a little bit more descriptive words than I did last night. I think people felt perhaps I didn't articulate well enough the concerns that the residents have. So having watched the tape back, I would tell you that they had very large concerns about no footprint limitation. Now, what is a little bit harder is that while footprint limitation is one factor, to site a building on it, you still have to provide the parking on the property associated with the use. You still have to, if you're not a property that's connected to the wastewater, you have to put a wastewater system in for sanitary. You have to put stormwater. It has to be recharged on site in the ground, and put your utilities. So when you start to, and you have 80% maximum coverage. So take the total lot size in the district, take 20% off, you can't, so that's 20%, you'll lop off the lot. Then the rest of it has to fit all in there, and you have other setbacks. So when you start to site everything on a building, things start to become a little more limiting. So as a practical matter, what the thought was that removing the cap wasn't going to be as problematic or concerning, because trying to fit everything in there can be challenging. Having said that, there's still reservations that what if this could happen. So the example I used at least last night was Four Kicks is 85,000 square feet, the footprint of it. So it gives you order of magnitude that probably people, if you haven't been to Four Kicks, you've been by it, you get a kind of a scaling. Because it was at the hearing, people were talking about 100,000 square foot buildings in the center of town. And it's probably really not something that would happen as a practical matter, because somebody's not going to try to make that size of building in Norfolk Center. It's just not the market for it. But nevertheless, you don't know. It's the what if. So that was a concern. So it's moving forward. It's been recommended to go to town meeting for discussion. It's not bundled with other ones. Everything came originally to the selectmen bundled as one motion. We'll go as we go along. There's only 3 of the changes bundled because they are critical to each other. So if they don't pass, you want the whole thing not to pass, and if and vice versa. If it passes, you want it all to pass. So they're unbundled. So that was Article 1. I don't know if you have. I'll just pause questions and we go through each one of them. That makes sense.
Questions or discussions? Yes, Dave?
Yeah.
So I guess the question is that if someone wanted to build a commercial building on the old Stop and Shop site, which allowed for greater than whatever that,
50,000.
they could put one there right
Yeah,
now,
they could.
if we did this. So they could put a medical building or something else right there,
Yes, they could go
according to this change.
if this change goes. Yeah.
Right, okay. And the spot that's right there too, same thing, right? The big
property's in
open field,
between-
the big open
Yeah.
field.
Not gonna get that size of building on that property. It's not that wide, but yeah, yeah.
I don't know exactly how big that is, so I
Yeah.
just wanted to ask.
Correct. Yep.
So this has the net effect of, so I'm reading the crossouts.
The net effect is actually there's a cap being removed, and then a cap on the upside as far as the grocery variety store coming down. So you're going from 50,000 square feet down to 20.
Can I ask, why do we care? Like, we'd be willing to have 100,000 square foot building of type A, but not willing to have 100,000 square foot building of type B being a grocery store? It sounds like this is a solution looking for a problem, right? Why are we, as you said, I think the realities of getting a store that size, it's like slim to none to begin with. Why are we sweating the details on freezing out grocery stores, but allowing other development that may be larger to come in. I don't understand the discrimination between grocery and variety stores here. What's the upside to
Is it
us?
just aesthetics for the town? You don't
I
want a
think it-
grocery store, but you'll take a medical plaza?
Or is it meant to encourage Stop and Shop to sell a lot?
It's really, the idea of reducing the footprint on the grocery store is to kind of create an incentive for Stop and Shop. Because right now, they're in a long-term lease on that property. Now, at one point, they had designed and permitted to put a super Stop and Shop in there. So at some point, they intended to put it in there. But now with all the grocery stores that have been built in the region and the surrounding area over time, it's, there's not incentive for them to do that. So,
I mean,
They're-
they're land banking this. We know
Yeah,
that they're
they're land
banking
banking.
it because they don't want a Stop and Shop competitor to come in and draw traffic away from all the Stop and Shops in surrounding towns. So us making a zoning change to say, okay, well, now you can't have a bigger grocery store, like what effect does that have on Stop and Shop land banking?
it might have a neutral effect, actually, but.
Right,
Yeah,
and so if that's the case, then again, I'd ask the question like, what are we trying to solve here? What's behind this of why it's okay to have a 100,000 square foot medical building,
I
but not
think
a
it's the-
100,000 square foot variety store?
Yeah, I think the overall purpose is to send a different message, that the town is really interested in having a smaller scale grocery store, not that the shift is shifted. So, at one point they were looking for, I think townspeople were more open to a larger scale grocery store, and I think there's a shift. Now, this is just, the feedback that we,
Why not keep a cap on all buildings then?
Right.
Why just make it grocery stores? So for example, you wanna make sure they understand you want a Brothers Market type grocery
Yeah.
store,
Yeah.
right? Okay, we get that. Why are you saying no cap on any other thing? So Four Kicks could come in and build a new Four Kicks over here. I'm not saying they would, I'm using that as an example. They could put it, it should still be capped at something for any other type of building, don't you think? Cause then what's Stop and Shop says, oh, we can't build there now, they'll just sell it to somebody who's gonna put something that we don't want, and now we took the cap out, hoping to get Stop and Shop to
Yeah.
put a small grocery store in, and we ended up selling it to someone who puts in something we didn't want because there's no cap.
and that's exactly the conversation that's been going on with this whole, notion of having a cap, not having a cap, and what do you cap it at? So, it
Just
could.
out of curiosity, did the planning board vote to say no cap?
Yeah, so everything that we're gonna go through was recommended by the planning board. So it received a majority vote. There is, the next one we get to wasn't a majority vote, it was 3-1, but the other ones were, sorry, not a majority. All the other ones were 4-0.
Unanimous, yeah.
Yeah, unanimous votes. There's only 4 members at the hearing.
So I went to the meeting 2 nights ago and I went to the meeting last night. I didn't stick it out through last night, sorry. But I got the sense that, they were, I don't know, they were rushing through this, and the idea of a cap, as Susan mentioned, was that dealt with appropriately? I mean, there's.
So the original
you've
discussion was
opened
actually.
everything open.
Yeah. so
Everything's
the-
open now, except
Right.
for grocery stores.
Right, so the original kind of moved in, removing the cap in its entirety, so no cap.
Right.
I think there was significant reluctance to no cap, because it was again, it's more of a sizing scale, but like what,
Right.
the sense of what would be appropriate massing of a building and town center. So it did go back and forth as far as, it landed on this, which is, I call it, if you will, a compromised position relative to capping, not capping. There's argument to be made both ways. I think, I think I talked about this last night, it's hard to recall, but you could just keep the cap in place, it's the 15,000 square feet, and lower the other cap. So there is still a cap. Because essentially now you're putting no cap and then you're capping lower, so.
I think for me, the concern is, out of the planning board, this doesn't feel like a plan and feels like a response to a single thing, as opposed to a plan for the downtown district.
Kinda like spot zoning.
Right, it doesn't just,
there's some emotion around something, there's a particular case, in this case Stop and Shop, so let's pass a zoning article that addresses one case?
yeah.
No, it's not. So this
Okay, so
is,
speak to that.
yeah, so this change is applicable to the whole B1 inner core district, so it's not
Correct,
just,
but what's triggering
Any
it doesn't
grocery
feel
or
that way.
variety store.
yeah, yeah,
Triggering it
It's
feels like
addressed
one
directly
case.
to Stop and Shop.
Right.
Let's be honest, that's exactly what it's doing. It's telling Stop and Shop, we originally approved you to build something here, now we are putting it in our bylaws that you can't. So keep the lease and keep paying us money for land you'll never develop or sell it to someone else.
So they're not really paying the town money, the property owner's paying taxes to the town, they're paying it to the leaseholder, but yeah, so.
I think that's
And
what
you-
they're actually doing, and I'm sorry about that, but and I understand, I just whispered it to her to make sure I was right. I understand that we already have it in place that you can't have a recreational marijuana place, or you can't have a casino here. I get all of that, those are already in place. Hypothetically, what you're doing by trying to address simply the Stop and Shop issue is you're now allowing anyone to come in and build anything of any size that they want, as long as it doesn't violate an existing bylaw. And who knows what the next planning board and the next town meeting will vote to accept. So then you're gonna,
So it
it
is-
might get accepted
So it's.
in 5 years,
Yeah,
and then
so-
we're stuck with allowing it.
Well,
Because
so the
we-
uses, the uses in the B1 aren't being, this is just the size of the building, so if you go, I don't know if you want, just like read through the uses in the,
I mean, can you explain why an alternate use would be acceptable and a variety store of that same size with the same footprint would be unacceptable, according to the planning board?
So the alternate side, this has already been, so what you see here in the bylaw,
Yeah,
this has been in the bylaws for years. This alternate preference between variety store and grocery store, and then the other uses relative to sizes.
But it was
But-
at 50,000.
it was,
What's that?
It was at 50,000.
Yeah, it was large.
actually the other way, where any other store had a cap at 15,000.
Right.
And these
Right.
had a larger, which I understand because these are larger, they require a larger footprint to do their work.
Mhm.
I don't understand the other way, where there is now only a cap on the things that previously had a larger, because their business required a larger footprint, and now they're the only ones that are capped, and other things are uncapped. Like, again, I just don't understand the theory of the case. Why are we flipping that around?
Right, so we had a small cap for what seems like everything except a larger cap for grocery stores and variety stores.
Right. Which seems
Now
like
we're going
And,
to a
and just so you be clear, 15,000 square feet building footprint is not small.
I'm
That's-
not saying
that-
it was.
Right.
Okay,
I'm
So,
saying it's smaller than
Yeah.
50,000.
yeah, it's smaller, but it's not, you know.
right, but now you're saying there is no cap at all.
Right.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong for speaking for other people, but I think what, at least the ones who've spoken up are trying to say is, we don't have a problem with capping a grocery store. I think a lot of people agree this town can't really function with a large super Stop and Shop traffic-wise. We have a freaking Rotary, for God's sakes. We don't have a red light. Like, where in the world people thought that a super Stop and Shop could ever go in there is insane. So I think that everyone is in agreement on that. I think what we're trying to say is, we would also like to see a equal in size cap for anything else. So let's say you wanna put it at 20,000 for a grocery store so that you encourage someone to build a small grocery store. How about you keep it at 30 or 40,000 for any other type of building? Just to ensure that something giant doesn't skate around the loophole that has now been created,
Yeah, so
right? Am I
maybe-
correct?
Yeah,
that what
and
you're
maybe
trying
the
to
better,
say? Like, keep a cap on both.
Is
Yeah.
it already addressed in the bylaws?
what's that? Yeah.
Just this other, is this the only place that the cap is being addressed?
Yeah, it's within the B1 zone. So I guess the component to it is that to allow for a little bit bigger footprint than 15,000, you might have a development that's a little bit larger as a footprint, but not necessarily go vertical. So it's like when you cap this way, you're gonna go up and, so forth. So I think it was kind of a play between those two kind of design options of allowing for some horizontal development, a larger footprint. But I understand, this is not, again, this is not perfected, as the chairman says, that none of these bylaws are perfect when it comes to zoning. these are general parameters you come in. The thought was that removing that cap made sense on the other side of it and bringing it down.
And can you explain what that sense was? Why did it make sense to remove that cap?
Just as I just said, that you could have a larger footprint beyond the 15,000 square feet to give somebody an option. Because vertical, I mean, there's different cost factors with it and may spread it out.
Well, we're about to hit building height and facade next article too.
That's where I was going, is what happened,
What happens if someone maximizes both, right?
What's that?
Like, we're not there yet, but someone could maximize both of those
They could.
elements.
Yeah, it could, but again, maximizing is based on putting everything together in one package.
No, I
It's not,
understand. The height, which we haven't addressed yet, is the same regardless of building usage type. Right?
yes,
So
Right.
a grocery store ostensibly can have the same height or maximum height as a variety store, as a Four Kicks, as anybody. So when you combine these two together, we are saying as a town, grocery store and variety stores can be this big, and other stores can be unlimited big, but the same height. We're still trying to understand why. Like, why are we okay on the same zone, same business district, same lot, to have a 100,000 square footprint for a private prison that I'm gonna open up and run? Same
Not
height,
zoned for that.
but we're not gonna have a grocery store of that size. Like, I haven't heard the rationale of why are we
uncapped?
capping a store of one type, but uncapping stores of every other type.
I think I've explained the rationale. You might not appreciate the rationale or accept the rationale. So there's a difference. I mean,
I honestly, I don't think I've heard it,
So I think you were saying earlier the rationale involves the Stop and Shop case.
no.
no,
Okay,
This
then
is
I'm
for
sorry.
the
to
district.
interrupt you.
yeah.
So I think you're focused on Stop and Shop.
Okay.
Okay, let me help with this.
Okay.
You're speaking specifically of B1, which, correct me if I'm wrong.
And not the whole B1 district.
Is specifically the Norfolk Town Center, the land that is available in Norfolk Town Center.
Yes.
Which includes the 5-acre property over here
Mm-hmm.
and the property across from the old, down by the old town hall. Is that also part of it?
No.
No, so it's just this one 5-acre lot?
Nope, it's the Stop and Shop, it's the Liberty, in between Main
So how many
Street.
acres is this one over here? The smaller one, the one across the street from Walgreens?
Over here?
Yeah.
I think there are just about 3 acres between the two.
So what is the largest building minus the 20% square footage wise that you can fit on a 5-acre property? In theory, not part of this. Any type of building that's allowed to be put there, what is the largest building that, square footage wise? Is it 50? Is it 100?
Depends what.
On a 5-acre lot minus the 20% for
Yeah,
what
well,
they have to do?
it depends on what the building type is based on the use. So what I mean by that, if you have, you take the parking requirements for retail, is gonna be different than other warehouse use. So there's different, so that's gonna dictate, how big the site
So let's take it with
is.
the least amount of parking and the largest building possible, which would, I would assume what you're saying would be a warehouse. How many square feet is that? Just out of curiosity.
So, actually, let me just,
I know we're asking for some calculations of the fly. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
you don't
If
need to be
ballpark it,
specific.
It's fine.
Certainly
Well,
ballpark
so-
what you're thinking.
well, so first off, a warehouse is not allowed
Okay.
in the B1.
So what's the largest building that would be allowed in the B1?
These
With
are
the
the
least
questions you're
amount of
gonna be
parking.
asked in 2
I'm
weeks.
asking because I'm going to try to, I'm gonna make sure that my rationale, that I am understanding what you said your rationale was. So just, if you could just guesstimate to the best of your knowledge, because I certainly don't have that expertise. I've never been on the planning board. I don't know. I don't know if I'm talking about a 200,000 square foot building or a 20,000 square foot building. So what will fit that is allowed?
Well, I just gave you the example of 4 kicks, right?
4 kicks.
So
So would that fit on a 5-acre property?
that would fit.
Okay,
That would fit.
so let's take that and say that we are talking about an 85,000 square foot building, okay, with parking. So we will not allow a grocery store over 20,000 because we don't want a big grocery store, because like we said, we don't have the infrastructure to support it. You would never be able to get the traffic flow in there with a rotary. We understand that. But you will allow an 85,000 square foot Four Kicks to go in there aesthetically. I think that's what people are having a problem with. if I'm understanding it. You're saying you can't have a large grocery store because we don't like the way that looks for planning purposes for our town, aesthetics, but by lifting the cap, and it doesn't already have an existing bylaw saying it can't go in there, like a warehouse or a recreational marijuana store, you're now saying, though, there's no cap. A Four Kicks type facility can come in and build an 85,000 square foot building right there. 46 feet high and 85,000 square feet, whatever the footprint for that is, covering 5 acres. I
So
think that's what
I'm
people have a
using,
problem
I'm
with.
using Four Kicks as a sizing example,
course.
not a use.
I'm not asking for a specific business model, I'm just saying, if we want to cap it for aesthetics for the town, we should cap it for all building types, no matter what, correct? So if we're talking about traffic flow, parking, water usage, sewer usage, taxes on the square footage, taxes on the footprint of it, the amount of power it's going to use, the amount of traffic it's gonna bring to the town, all of those things come into play, but there still should be a cap, because removing a cap entirely allows for people to come in, businesses or corporations to come in and find the loophole that we have not thought of. That when this planning board and when this article was written, we didn't think of that, because we're humans, we can't possibly think of everything. So somebody's gonna go, hey, there's no cap, I'm building X, it's not against the bylaws. And then what are you gonna do? So why not just alleviate that? We know you don't want a big grocery store, but why not say we don't want a big anything? Cap everything at 50,000. That's all I'm saying, I think that's,
Yes, please, go ahead.
Can I ask, because you had mentioned there's like restrictions on what can and cannot go in the district, can you give us the list of what is allowed in that district, what types of,
In that section of B1.
yeah, that section of.
Sure. Adult daycare, ancillary to assisted living, art gallery, studios, ATM, bakeries, banks, childcare facility, coffee shops, collection for dry cleaners, laundry, convenience stores, craft stores, cultural centers, symphony hall, or other places of community or public enjoyment or indoor. Dance, exercise, aerobic studios, delicatessens, electric vehicle charging stations, farmers market, funeral home, grocery store, hard goods sales store, historical cultural society, job printing, laundromats, licensed inn or hotel, limit use motor vehicle sales, medical, dental, optical clinics, meeting rooms, buildings, accessory to assisted living facility, mixed use, municipal buildings, offices, office buildings, open space, parking, post office, private schools, public transportation facilities,
okay.
restaurants,
Okay.
retail.
Mixed use mini mall
No,
in there.
can I,
Yeah, David, go ahead, please.
one of the things that came up last night was the idea of a senior center, or a senior living facility, which would fit in that profile, correct? And I am not certainly saying we shouldn't have senior living facilities in the town, but it could be as big as it wanted to be, right there, basically, right?
Yes.
And it would be,
Well,
it would be a huge septic issue, so it would
If the
probably.
business wanted to
Right,
take it, so I
right.
think your earlier point was the ifs are pretty,
Right.
for
So
all the
those are the
reasons you
kinds of
said,
things,
not a
those are
lot
the kinds of
businesses wanna
things
come
that
here.
could figure out how to be as big and as square as they want it to be on the biggest
So
lot
the
they
way
could find in
the-
town. And there's having done this research recently on a personal level, there's a shortage of that kind of service in the general area.
You also
so the
mentioned,
incentive, actually, that particular use has been in this bylaw as incentivized to be in Norfolk Town
Okay.
Center.
But was it incentivized to be as big as it could?
Yeah, we haven't got to the density provisions, but everything related to density was allowed for more density relative to assisted living versus
Are those
other.
rooms considered residential, or are they considered commercial?
They're residential for sanitary flow wise.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just from a timing perspective, half hour, this is our first article.
One now.
I don't think we're getting into new information, if I can just recap this. The functional intent of eliminating the first sentence of Article 1 is to eliminate the general restriction on the size in terms of square feet of people who want to come in here and then do something, and to allow for more flexibility. I think that's what you had talked about before, some more flexibility there. And the intent of the second sentence is to bring down the targeted caps that specifically targets grocery stores and variety stores. So that's the intent of this. Now, I think we're getting into whether we think it's a good or a bad idea, and I understand that. We've asked some questions. Have we adequately captured the intent?
Yeah.
Cool. I'm gonna move us on to Article 2. We will have a chance to then discuss this further. I also wonder if perhaps some of these articles might work together, so maybe we'll get the total sense of some of this. Maybe there's other provisions, like you were just talking about density, that may come into play to many of the legitimate, I think, use cases and scenarios that we're thinking of.
Right.
So let's
We
get
will,
to Article
yep.
2.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there, just a quick question.
Go ahead.
So just a potential conflict of interest, I've had personal business interest in this area.
Mhm.
Should I don't know if I recuse myself from the vote, or
That's
the
a,
discussion?
that's a great question. I'm not sure, I'd have to know a bit more about this. We can take it
Goes for your
offline.
variety store?
My private prison.
Is it 85,000 square feet?
No, I mean, quite seriously, I
You
looked at
can
it.
go ahead and recuse yourself just to be on the safe side. That's what I'm doing for the lake
Water
cleaning
rules.
article. If we lack a quorum, then we can talk more about it. But I agree, it's better to be safe than sorry.
Okay.
I was gonna make a joke about you being part of the problem, but we're running short on time, so I'm just kidding. Okay, so Article 2, please walk us through, thank you.
All right, so, the idea behind Article 2 was presently, it's slightly different how it's defined, but to increase the building height to allow for flexibility and increase in, additional floors within the building. So you could have a little bit higher first floor and then add residential above it, or it could be commercial, but to allow flexibility and height relative to the zoning bylaw. Right now, you can go up to 46 feet by special permit to the peak of the roof. So that was where the number that they kept it, to go 46 feet. It slightly changes it by doing the mean level of the highest gable or hip roof, but effectively, it's not, from an architect standpoint, I'm not an architect, so it's not effectively that much higher than what's in there today.
How tall is the new building on the corner? Right here? Which way are we facing? Right here?
It's,
Just to get a point of reference.
I'm trying to do this, 40 feet to the peak of the,
The tallest point is 40 feet.
no, on the end, the gable, the top of the little, I guess it's a cupola, but whatever, the architectural element, I think was 50, like 52 feet, I think, somewhere in there, 52, 53 feet.
Did they get did they get a waiver for that, or was that
That
allowed?
So that architectural element is exempt
Okay.
from the height, so that's how they got above that. So they're, what this would do is, right now, it's 3 stories. They did go back and forth between, and this is the one that did not have unanimous vote, it was 3-1. The chairman had proposed to keep it at 3 stories. Keep the present language, the flexibility to go to 46 feet instead of special permit, so that you can get a higher pitch roof, and you want it. I think the overall sense, people wanted to see pitch roofs on buildings in town center, from an aesthetic standpoint, so why penalize somebody is what you want to see happen, so that's why they did it. And again, they said they add that half story.
Okay. Any question, yes, David?
Where did the selectmen come out on this one? Last night?
They actually,
Was it unanimous? Because when I
They
left, it
didn't
was.
vote on.
Yeah, they
on
didn't
the-
actually
They
vote.
didn't take a position. They really focused last night on deciding to bundle the ones in was it number 6, Rich?
yeah,
The definitions and the uses, and then each of the other items separately. They focused more on
Right.
the strategy of addressing this with the town and letting people have the chance to weigh in on these separate things,
Okay.
rather than whether they're gonna actually take a vote to support or not support something at some point, we didn't get into.
Okay. Rich, prior to us getting to too many other questions, were there any other points you wanted to make about the
No,
intent
that's-
of the
no,
planning board?
yeah, no, that's,
So again, do you want to allow more flexibility, both architecturally, pitched roofs are a good thing, as well as perhaps just people wanting something slightly taller, just in general?
yeah, and I think the backdrop to that is, I think people might have and I know people do have a different opinion, but I think some people's idea of a New England Town Center Village is a mix of commercial and residential buildings, multi-story. And to make some sites perhaps more economically viable, to bring in some commercial first floor and residential above it, similar to
Like Walpole?
Walpole, and other town centers, that to give somebody the height to be able to do that, to make it work. So it's kind of that economic model,
Okay.
goes back to turn of the century, residential, commercial, they mix, they help support each other, and to give flexibility to be able to do that.
Turn of which century? Sorry.
19th.
smartass. Okay.
Questions?
Yeah, my question is a mansard roof meet the specification as opposed to what we would traditionally consider a pitched roof? Because it would have a pitch to it, even though there's a flat roof on top, and it would show that it is, it has the pitched look. So I would say it feels like it would.
It specifies a pitched 5 to 12.
That's a
That
minimum.
means,
It's
right,
a 5-foot rise
yeah.
for each 12-foot run.
I don't like a mansard. Mansards
It's,
are much.
yeah, it's much steeper than that.
I don't know about that, actually, because a mansard is a fake, it's in
Right, but it's got a pitch and it's with roofing materials, so.
Mhm.
I mean, if I'm a developer, I say yes. What does the planning board say?
I would venture to say they probably would say no, I suppose, if I would ask them. I know that we are, thinking to this piece of it, but part of this project is to develop design guidelines, which has, visual imagery, the type of buildings that, and roofing and so forth that we're, I think the preferences people want to see. I don't remember anything with mansard's roof in them though, so I think probably they would argue that it doesn't fall within that, but
Okay, thank you.
not 100% sure.
Understood.
But, yeah.
Other questions about the height language?
Mansour, M-A-N-S-O-U-R, they're developed to get around zoning.
Okay, so I'm hearing no, so let us continue to Article 3, please. If you could walk us through that, Rich.
Sure. So this article is relative to changing the density when it comes to a mix of residential, commercial use. So right now, there's a limitation which is based on 16 bedrooms per acre, per site, under the present bylaw. If you read through the strike through a little bit, there's more flexibility as far as the bedroom goes relative to the assisted living that we talked about earlier.
So this essentially allows us a special permit to go larger than 16 bedrooms.
Yeah, so this really does, the intent of this article is really twofold. One is to not regulate by bedroom, which is against fair housing, against anti-discrimination, to remove that. We're not actually, in this case, there's a lot of towns that have done that way, so there's plenty of books, bylaws on the books that are discriminatory relative to familial status. So one of the things is to remove that and then create a units per acre. The units per acre is increased, and the increase is again to try to, overall, there's this underlying goal to try to see if people would develop their property more in keeping with what the town wanted to see from a vision standpoint, as of taking outs, which you have seen going the 40B route, as far as all residential development, to have development that has residential plus commercial in the B1 zone, and to make it a little bit more economic, again, to create more of the mix from a economic model, so that way when you try to build up a new building, have commercial first floor, residential above, this increases that 16 per units per acre. To go above 16 units per acre, it would require a special permit through the planning board. So there might be a case that somebody could make to go higher than that. At presently, we have there is a cap, if you will, because of the Title V regulations. and the local Board of Health regulations. Right now, the local Board of Health regulations require a 50% overage per bedroom, so it's essentially like 165 gallons per day for a bedroom in the design, because the present Board of Health regulations require designing for garbage grinders and then building the septic field to accommodate that. We're under Title V state regulations, that's not a requirement, it's 110 gallons per day, and then a leach field to correspond with that, so that it changes the build out. There's some discussion with the Board of Health to change the regulations where they would allow someone to, if you're gonna have a garbage grinder, you gotta meet the requirements of Title V. If you're not, then you could put in a septic field based on 110 gallons per day per bedroom. So as far as how we regulate bedrooms, it's really from a public health standpoint, a sanitary way, not necessarily from a zoning perspective. And Title V regulates overall number of bedrooms on a piece of property. There's a 10,000 gallons a day limit for on-site wastewater, septic. If you go above 10,000 gallons a day, then you go into a level where you have to have a packaged treatment plant. There is a packaged treatment plant for town center for a few of the properties. I don't know if everybody is aware of that, but the condos up on the hill, a meeting house, the commercial properties that we did talk about, so the Stop and Shop, Walgreens, Silla's, sports therapy office next to that, and then the vacant property that's between Liberty Lane and Main Street. They have allocated flow into that wastewater treatment plant. The design flow is 30,000 gallons a day. There's a portion of it that's going to each one of those. The flow that's being shared for down here is, I think it's 13,000. It could be 12 or 13,000, but that's for Silla's, Walgreens, and then the other vacant parcels on the other side. So at the moment, there is a sanitary cap, if you will, because there's only so much flow available. Now, the wastewater treatment plant is owned and operated by the town of Norfolk. It wasn't not originally intended to be a municipal wastewater treatment plant. There's thoughts about looking to see if that could be expanded. That would require town approval. So the town owns and operates, so expanding that would be up to the townspeople to do that. So there is some evaluation that potentially we might be looking to do that to.
Got it. So just kind of sum up, Article 3 as it is now caps units at no more than 2 bedrooms, except for assisted living facilities.
So no more bedroom cap, it's a unit cap. Yeah, so.
Right, and then it changes it to then 16.
16 or higher per acre by
Per
special
acre,
permit.
or you can go higher if there's a special permit.
Correct,
And again, so the intention here is to allow greater density
correct,
in developers for developers as an option.
yes. And just one last point, and then I'll pause, is the density, the number and the calculation of density was to provide some density that was incentivize people to consider this option, as opposed to looking at, for example, across the street, it's 194 Main, and looking at 23 units per acre. So we're trying to provide a density that's encourage somebody to go a different option, but not up to that full density level by right, so we're trying to go between those two things, so we could hopefully have people consider development under the bylaw.
So you think that the limit it's set at 16 provides a reasonable incentive without going crazy for the town?
Correct,
Does this apply to the whole town or just to the B1?
just the B1,
So just town centers?
yeah.
Other questions about Article 3? Intention or impact?
The other piece is it would allow, more than 2 bedrooms per unit. So if someone wanted to have 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units, they could.
They could have more than that, although the likelihood is not so much for 3 bedroom, because they're not necessarily 1 bedroom. There's demand for them, so but there is no guarantee against that. There wouldn't be potentially
But if we
3 bedroom.
make our town center very appealing, maybe 2 bedrooms would be an option.
Right, exactly, provide some flexibility.
Are there other parts of the planning board, or the zone that require or have affordable housing as part of it, so that if we're gonna have a greater density, we can encourage that without having to go 40B?
Yeah, so we'll get to that just a little bit further in
Okay.
as we go to it, but yeah, there's another
Any other
section.
questions about Article 3 before we go on to 4? Going once, going twice. Article 4. Please take us there, Rich.
So Article 4 is essentially, we landed on having the planning board be inserted for the zoning board of appeals if somebody wanted to apply for a reduction in the buffer when the property is adjacent to the residential district. So there are some properties in that case. There was discussion about reducing it below 50 feet from the start, and they decided to keep it at 50, but just change how it gets permitted. So that was,
And
was that?
ZBA likes this, the planning board likes this.
yeah, both were fine. I think, not speaking for the ZBA as a whole, but some of the provisions in the zoning bylaw that are really connected to a project, I think, and we'll get to a couple other ones, well, at least one other one, they're fine with. I think it makes sense, the synergy you have in that together. So they're okay with that.
From a overall structural perspective, are the selectmen leaping with joy about this? They feel like this is a good fit? Or is there no comment? It's an organizational question, that's why I'm asking in terms of jurisdiction.
I think they're fine with it. I wouldn't go with leaping with joy, but they're fine with it.
I just got excited.
It's okay.
I don't think anybody's leaping from joy from it.
Get excited, town business, it's important.
We're actually not doing anything,
Hmm.
it's switching the jurisdiction.
Well, let's leap to Article 5 then, so no other questions.
Reduce
So the Article 5 would give the planning board the authority to waive some of the required parking when a project comes before them through the site plan review process. The thought being, just quickly by way of just some background, there was discussion to reduce the parking from 1.5 to 1. That's been scrapped. And the thought being that this actually could fulfill part of the objective here, which is when you have mixed-use development, there are different peaks related to parking. There might be situations where, you might have tendency that it's commercial that don't need parking demand in the evening, and the residents have access to that parking. And this is all predicated that in the downtown, particularly with, the MBTA, being here in town center, that might be more an incentive for somebody to be able to get by with not having less vehicles. So it's not for everybody. If you got more than one vehicle right now, you might not be interested, but there are some that, but it becomes on a case-by-case basis when it goes through the permitting process, that determination, so.
Got it. Questions about Article 5, yes, Brian?
It seems that one thing that is struck and not brought into the bold is the need to have an area reserved for future parking. What if the initial analysis is wrong? This gives no place for growth within the existing footprint.
That's why I would kind of say, the existing provision it's a comfort provision, so it's whereby, as that you say, okay, well, we have reserve it.
We're getting rid of our comfort.
Right.
Okay.
But what I'm saying to you is that as a practical matter, you want to do the analysis up front and be comfortable that it works, or don't do it at all. Because when you start saying, oh, well, this might work and we reserve it, well, 10 years from now, go back to somebody and try to say, go put in extra parking, can be a little bit of an administrative headache to try to go enforce that. So but it gives them some flexibility. We'll see. I mean, I think the general thought from people, as development, particularly in Norfolk Center, people might not be looking to reduce parking overall, because it's not
I'd love to go back to Four Kicks and tell them to put in a real parking lot so we don't have kids running across the street in the middle of the day.
I won't pay for a police detail, which
Right.
is, I think, a reasonable thing to do.
And since we've talked about a similar large structure going in that could use this provision to not have adequate parking in town and have people parking on the other side of Main Street or on the other side of 115, like, I don't, striking the part that says you need to reserve future parking and having two large lots for that, I'd be interested in the planning board thought of how their analysis would be so good that we wouldn't run into the same problem in the future.
So what end up, as a practical matter, you're gonna self-limit yourself though. So that's the idea. If you take, I mean, if you get a waiver,
I didn't follow that. How do you
So-
self-limit
well,
yourself?
so say you come in to the board and you haven't planned out that you might wanna have reserved parking.
Yeah.
You may not be able to do what you wanna do if tendency changes.
But we got rid of the requirement to have that reserved parking.
Yeah, so the onus is on you as a property owner. You need to have
Four
the,
Kicks seems fine with kids running across the street. It's not their problem.
yeah, 4 Kicks is not really,
I understand it's a different
it's a good
zone.
example.
I think it's a great example, but
Right, so I think what we're talking about is if the owner doesn't plan on reserved parking, that hoses the town, not them.
Thank you.
That's, I think, what we're concerned about.
thank
Do you not see that panning out? Do you see that panning out under certain circumstances?
Because they run out of spots because they hadn't planned, so now all those people are parking in other places in town. En route, like,
It's just shifting the problem.
Well, I mean, and what's to
So-
stop, if you're talking about talking about B1, what's to stop people who are parking for the train running late, can't find a spot, oh, I'm just gonna pull in here? Are you gonna have a sign put up that says you can only be here for 30 minutes a day?
the
And,
business can
and
do
it's
that.
some,
yeah.
right, but I'm saying, but now you gotta make sure someone's coming through and ticketing those people. There's just a lot of costs that are added in because we didn't
So
plan
if
for
they're,
parking.
if they're not, you're talking about on the public ways?
No, I'm saying hypothetically, okay, so in the list that you gave, two things that stood out to
on
me
the next
were,
page to the list.
were hotel and craft store. So what you're essentially saying is a Hobby Lobby can come in there. Because you didn't put a cap on it and it says craft store. So now you've got a Hobby Lobby in there with needing to have, I don't know, however much parking space a Hobby Lobby needs to have, you know, to facilitate that.
yeah.
Now you also, because there's not a lot of parking there, you also have the people who park for the train. And you can't say it doesn't happen, because it does. Because I go to the train lot and there's people pulled up on the curbs, there's people pulled up into the grass. We run out of spots almost every day in the upper lot. So now you've got train people parking in Hobby Lobby's parking lot. Right? I mean, you're gonna
Yeah,
have
so-
are you paying someone to, or is the town gonna pay someone to go monitor the Hobby Lobby parking lot to ensure that any of the cars aren't there parked for the train?
No, because
Which
if
takes
you-
down the
if
amount
you-
of parking
if
that's
you park-
able, so now the people who are shopping there are parking across the street and running across the street.
So if you're parking on my lot and I own the property, I have to police it to have you towed if you're not there. It's not a municipal, this is a private development project, and they're, on the onus is gonna be on them to police it.
But if we have kids running around because there's not enough parking, then it's a town.
Well, but I would like us to be careful and distinguish between, I think what we're talking about here is a business planning on having reserved parking to accommodate its own customers that it is creating demand for, like Four Kicks. Now, I agree that the issue that we're talking about alternately is just general population density, things like, you know, a large structure coming up and then overflow and stuff, but that's not really the
Right.
business owner planning for its own demand. I think we're all gonna have a very vibrant discussion when it comes to the overall square footage cap, which I think, yeah, that also causes that problem. But speaking just to this is simply saying you don't have to plan on reserved parking. I think that's to cover the demand that you're creating. So,
So,
Yeah.
you make, again, you make the case to them, they may not grant it. It doesn't mean they're gonna grant this waiver, so, and some of the examples that,
Not having the thing for the again, I am not a planner or a builder, so my questions may seem stupid, I'm just trying to get an understanding of this. We build it out, that gets approved. I'm gonna say that lots of times businesses fail, correct? right?
Okay.
So we didn't plan for any future parking. Does it now limit what can go into that building? Limit who it can be sold to and limit what can be housed there?
It's a
Because-
limitation on it, yes.
Because someone who put in a warehouse, for example, or whatever is allowed in there, had a specific parking they allotted for that. Now it can't be sold to ice cream shop because they're gonna have a different level of parking.
Right, so I think.
Because we're not
that's
planning for the
Yeah,
future, because the part about the
understood.
future is.
I think
taken out.
another way of putting this is providing short-term flexibility to allow someone to put something in with lesser parking, offset by the long-term, you're kind of, so it's kind of at the expense of the long term, because now who's gonna buy that business because the original owner was super stingy and didn't think about reserved parking. So that, I think, is where you're.
Right,
Like-
but that problem, is on them,
The original owner.
Well,
correct.
And the
'Cause
problem
if
with a
you want
vacant building is on the town.
Yeah, because
What's
like.
that?
And the problem with a vacant building is on the town.
Right, like, Silla's might be there forever, Walgreens probably not going out of business. I'll just go ahead and throw that out there. But let's say the chiropractor, or physical therapy place, if their business goes down, they're not gonna stay. They might decide to move on to a bigger shop somewhere else. People move on, businesses like that come and go. Now another thing goes in that same spot that has a lot more than 3 patients a day needing parking. Right? It's a restaurant, it's an ice cream store, it's something else that's small, craft store, whatever it's got. Now, instead of 3 patients plus 2 or 3 employees, that's 6 or 7 parking spots, which is what it was intended for when it was built. Now it's a business that needs 50 parking spots. Those people are going to have to park somewhere else. So all we're saying is, if you take out the part about the future, it's not allowing for us to say, oh, hey, your business that you're asking for only needs 6 spots, so you wanna build a teeny tiny little parking lot. But for the town purposes, we don't think 6 lots is enough, so we want you to build something bigger.
Does the planning board see that as a danger?
I guess the danger of this existing provision is the scenario that you talk about, that's a reserve area, and the town, planning board says, okay, property owner X, you have a parking problem, your customers are parking in other adjacent areas. Go build that additional parking that you have reserved. They say to you, those aren't my customers. Those are people coming, they're parking in my lot because they're going to the library. There's somebody parked in my lot because they're going to the Walgreens. So now the town, the shifts for us to prove that they're underparked. So that's why the notion of this is having a false sense of security that you bank an area, now we have to go prove that there's a parking problem and then go build it, and it's at their expense on a private piece of property. We can't go build
We're
it.
literally striking the line that says the planning board shall have the determining authority regarding the future need of parking. What you're saying is, it's not that it's on the planning board to make the case. The planning board has the authority to say, this is the requirement.
But we don't have the authority, I think what you're saying is we can't enforce it anyway. Like, what does it take for us to actually prove this in the future when this happens? It's like almost impossible to. So we're trying to keep a clause in that we can't realistically administer anyway.
And we're also holding up land that can't be used for anything, right? It's just being held for parking and not being used currently for
Is
anything.
that accurate, Rich?
That's it, yes,
Got it.
both points.
Interesting. Okay. So thank you for the back and forth. I know there's a lot of Byzantine examples. I appreciate you talking it through with us, because this does have real long-term impact. A lot of us have examples in our minds ready at hand. Okay, so next
The
article.
Hobby Lobby was a good one.
Right? Well, you said craft
That was a
store.
good one.
You also said hardware store, you would stuff a Lowe's or a Home Depot.
So we are now, I believe, at Article 6, which is law.
Okay.
Article
Yeah,
6.
boy.
So this is bundled. Article 6 has 3 sections.
Can you perhaps start with the intent?
Sure. The idea or the intent of this is to, presently we have the provision of bylaw that you could have a commercial building and then you could have another building that's all residential. So you could have, multiple buildings on a site. The intent of this was to create some flexibility, whereas somebody would have a principal building, which would be commercial, at minimum on the ground floor, could be more. But if somebody wanted to have a secondary, all residential, they could do it, but it had to be back further off the street behind the principal building. So it was, again, to create some flexibility. And one of the drivers of it was, and again, I know there's gonna be opinion and disagreement of it, is that, you have to have people in proximity that are gonna spend money at these local businesses. Having the customers in the base in proximity, so it gives another option how that could be done on some of the properties. And that's what, but by creating the, two definitions, that's one piece of it that helps define it better.
Okay.
This other section, so that B1 core that we talked about earlier, right now the inclusionary bylaw has 10% affordable inclusion. In this case, it's been increased. So if we do have a development that has residential, we will get additional affordable units to go above. So we actually would make a little bit more.
15%, right? Is that
Correct,
right?
yep. Excuse me, to go beyond the 10% inclusionary that we have now. Now, this is just within that B, the core area. There's other B1 outside core that this doesn't apply to right now. But that also, this type of development is specific to the B1 core. So it's not the whole entire, on the other side where Dunkin' Donuts is and going down Main Street.
So you're trying to keep the residential stuff back out of sight, for lack of a better word?
Yeah, so you have I think, sense from people, they want to see commercial downtown. They want to see at least a commercial active first floor, right?
Yeah.
Not residential. They understand the idea that you need some residential to make it work sometimes economically, but if it's behind, at a site, or above, so be it.
Are
But
there other towns that do it this way?
there are other towns that do it this way,
Any
yes.
maybe big examples that you might know of off the top of your head, or, we're trying to do it like X town or Y town?
Yeah, I'm
I
trying
feel
to
like
think.
doesn't Norwood have that? That whole street is commercial businesses and everything above second, third, fourth stories are all residential?
But this is.
So this is a
also
little
separate
slightly
buildings
different,
for
because
all
it's not,
residential.
yeah, it's
These
not.
are all separate buildings.
Now, this would be a commercial building
Yeah,
with
so-
residential in front, and then behind that, an all residential building.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of an example, maybe I just don't pull off the road enough to see it.
Yeah, I mean, in Norwood Center, in some cases, those properties might actually act like this if they were developed that way because of the proximity of them. Because, you have the main street and then the houses behind it. But that's the intent of this. And this is specifically, the way this has been drafted is that if you have a principal building, you still have to, so if you have a long linear piece of frontage, there was a lot of discussion in this that you still have to fill the frontage with principal buildings. It could be a mixed building, but at least has to be commercial on the ground floor. And then the building can be secondary behind it. And so there was a lot of discussion on that, and that the sequencing was another thing that was part of this whole discussion, so.
Is there anything in place to stop someone from building a large building that's supposed to be commercial on the bottom and then his apartment's on the top, but they never actually rent out the bottom, kind of like the thing on Boardman and Main? There's never been a business in there because the guy who built it didn't actually want it. That's the only way he could get approval from the town. He only wants to rent out the buildings on the top.
So we don't have,
So people could do that, is what I'm saying. You're saying they could build 16 apartment buildings with
A
the
vacant
plan for an ice cream shop in the bottom or a retail store, never actually put that in, and just make the money off the 16 apartment buildings that are on the top.
yeah, so we are not going that next level, if you would say that you've gotta have a tenant in there and you have to, you gotta have a commercial tenant.
Are you able to? Like legally,
Yeah, I think,
if we permit a building, are we allowed to hold up
Does the town
occupancy
have a
based on?
vacancy tax?
Yeah,
so, there was discussion about the vacancy tax, so here's it's really how you, I think in some respects, approach the economics of it. So a vacancy tax is really a penalty, right, to keep it, if you're keeping your building vacant. So some people might just pay that and they don't wanna keep it occupied. Some might see it as a penalty to try to encourage, to bring in tenants, and because of the economics, I can't get a tenant to fill that space. So there might be somebody who purposely does that, but there are also people who have vacancies in space in town center right now. So should we then assess them a vacancy tax? That's kind of a larger discussion, but we hear of different reasons why they haven't done it, but you're kind of clawing in a little, again, it's how you wanna govern, I guess, but that really starts to get a little bit far from some people.
So I hear no, we don't have a vacancy tax?
We don't have a vacancy tax,
Right,
yeah.
but I'm just playing devil's advocate. What I'm saying is that there's nothing in place to stop someone from skirting around the zoning issues, because now we can have 23 units per acre and an ice cream store on the bottom that never gets actually opened. And the whole purpose was to get 23 units per acre. On a 5-acre lot, it's 100 apartments.
Here's
Or
what I can say, 'cause I've like
125,
listened to like all these meetings, right? And one thing that came up was by making it have to be the entire frontage, like it actually isn't very economical for someone to keep that entire first floor vacant. Like maybe if it was, I think they changed that, right, where it was supposed to be
Right.
just a piece of it, but by making it the entire first floor, like most developers aren't going to just sell the second and third floor and leave the entire first floor vacant. They have to make some effort to sell it because it doesn't work otherwise. Does
Yeah.
that sound right, from what I remember?
Yeah, I mean, there are people who, I suppose, can afford to do that, but for the most part, people put up a building and they've got to paint it, they put up the building, the costs going into it, and they keep it vacant.
Have
It's
an
not-
entire floor vacant is actually pretty.
It's not,
So we have an example of that.
Yeah.
I would say it's not as far-fetched as it is made to seem, because we have
Well, and the-
one example.
And we have a vacant lot.
Right,
And
so-
the income from 23 units per acre, that's 125 rental units. I would imagine they're gonna make a hell of a lot more money off 25 rental units than they are off of one
but you have to build out.
physical therapy place,
You have to have a corresponding amount of commercial that you have to build out to get those 25 units, so.
It's just empty, if you don't actually put anything inside of it, it's just an empty square. You're talking about, yes, I understand the taxes on it, yes, I understand the square footage wise, but you can just 4 walls and some sheetrock. If you don't actually put a business in there yet, it's just this empty structure. It's no different than building out a basement but not renting it out.
Well,
I mean,
but
not
also,
really.
I also wonder though, who wants to walk through a ghost town to get to your house?
Right, like how
or
you gonna sell those
apartment?
units?
I know that there are some commercial places out there who are trying to get things like coffee shops, they're trying to get things like gyms and stuff, or a workout room downstairs, because it actually helps them compete. But, just before I get to you, David, very, very, very quickly, so does the town, so we've talked about vacancies can be a problem in the town. Does the planning board see this particular article making that worse, better, or neutral?
I don't think they view it as making it
I
worse.
think that's part of the concern you're getting here,
Right.
is does this
Right.
not, or,
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
I think they thought that, building out commercial space to corresponding, have a principal building, secondary building, and keep it vacant, doesn't necessarily make good economic sense.
okay,
So they
David,
weren't-
you had a question.
A couple questions. Jonathan, what was your specific example you were heading for?
Yeah,
Boardman in Maine.
I'm sorry, I'm having okay, all right, yeah, all right.
It's the old gas station.
Yep, okay.
Grayish.
The other,
buildings.
I had a related example that's not in the B1. The river, villages at River's Edge had 3/4 built out residential for a mixed-use permit. Before, basically, their permit came up and the selectmen said, we're not gonna renew until you build the commercial. So there's no chance of that happening in this case? or
This does say the commercial has to be constructed first.
Constructed, yeah.
Constructed and ready for occupancy? Okay.
Well,
Because that was a huge
so that's
problem for that, because they were basically almost done with the residential, and they had to come back to renew their permit before they built that commercial building.
Okay, I don't know
You haven't been around this long, so
the particulars of that, yeah, but,
I was just making sure that,
yeah. Well, so,
and that, I guess the one on the Boardman of Maine was the same thing.
I get it.
He built out, and my
I
understanding
suppose
is he
there's
actually had
always- listen.
he actually had occupants before he had an occupancy permit, so. So that's why that's another good example.
Just,
Can I ask about the 15% for the affordable housing? Why
Mhm.
that's not more? I know that it's more than the 10% we need, but
Yeah.
the town's not at 10%. I'm just curious as to 15 versus 20,
So
25.
we had so we did meet with property owners before and, or through the process, and starting to layer all these things. At one hand, there isn't, so for example, we don't have sewer in a lot of the areas, and so trying to build and construct a on-site septic system is expensive. So when you start to layer in all that infrastructure cost, and then try to finance and build a building to what you want, it starts to make it uneconomic. So it was to try to provide some economic incentive to build out
Okay.
what the town would want, instead of say, well, you know what, maybe we should go this way, which is, not necessarily what the town would want to see. So to get more, but not bring it to the percent where, somebody might say, I might as well just go 40B. And those are the thoughts behind it. Because I know everybody has Hobby Lobby and different visions of what can happen, but there's a whole economic piece to this. We're in we've been sustained in a fairly decent economy within our region right now, and there has been development that's gone on, and we haven't necessarily seen, this is the first mixed-use building that happened next door, and at least discussions with the property owner there. That property was owned by the Norfolk Credit Union. They bought it in 2006 for $500,000. They sold it for $375,000 last year. They had a permit to build their own, and they couldn't make it work. And that site was pretty expensive. So when you start to build a building, get the land, rent it, finance it, and you start to add all these things, it's not as the economics makes this stuff a little bit challenging. So I appreciate the concern, and don't get me wrong, but again, the people, if you're gonna do, you're trying to make some money out of these investments, so you wanna make sure it's gonna work from a development standpoint as well. So some stuff I don't think, you might not see, but.
I have a technical point and a question.
Mhm.
On page 5, it says, in B1 business core, at 15% of 10 or more dwelling units, should that be at least 15? You might wanna check the words there, because it seems like it's missing something.
15.
In the B1
Yeah.
business score, at 15% of dwelling, yeah.
We should delete the add 15% of 10 or more dwelling shall be.
15%, yeah. I have
I
a
mean,
lot of
you
eyes
can't
on
make
it,
it
but another
exactly
eye is
15.
good, we can check and see.
Yeah, no, that's it. And then the other question is, as this overlaps with the 3.5-story unit, if the half is half sunken, what is considered the ground floor for this purpose?
So we did the street grade, so that's the, so you have to have it as, so your primary, so if you're on Liberty Lane, then that's the ground floor, and vice versa, so we did.
So no principal building could have 3.5 stories.
No, it could have 3.5 stories.
So then which is the street grade story? The one that's half sunken, or the one that's half above street grade?
I'm not sure, the question, so it's,
Maybe I don't understand what a 3.5-story building is. I thought it was,
no, so the half story
yeah,
is really the one that's incorporated within the roof. So the next door,
yeah.
if you look at it, it's really 2.5 stories. So you take the footprint of the building, and then inside that, I'll call half story,
Yeah.
because that's the half story. So there's apartments in there. It's smaller, but
Yeah.
that's the half story. It's not a full. You have a knee wall, and that's
Okay, so it's a knee wall.
it's a
okay.
knee wall. So that's
Alright.
how. Yeah, not below grade.
Okay,
Yeah,
And you were saying that the first floor could be a bigger floor, like
It
for
could be a
commercial
bigger
space,
floor.
and then the 2
Yeah.
floors would be normal.
okay.
yeah.
Right, cause 6 feet, the 40 to 46, 6 is not enough for a whole floor.
Correct.
So it's just to encourage a different type of building.
Yes.
Art, can I ask a quick?
Please do, we're just tallying the votes.
Sure.
Tonight, but
The, This is the last article that's directly related to the B1, right?
Yes.
Okay, so the broader question that I guess some of your analysis on the original proposal had was, what is the potential occupancy this brings into town? Because one of the questions that you're gonna be asked is, when they built the building up on top of the hill here, that was supposed to bring enough population into town to prompt a grocery store. It really was. That was the discussion that was had at town meeting 15 years ago, 10 years ago. The building down on the new development down on Main Street, same thing. We now have walkable tenants that are gonna prompt commercial development. At some point, opening up downtown to commercial, or to residential development, maybe there's not a tipping point, but, I mean, in your analysis, there was some discussion about more foot traffic brings more development. I've heard that for 15 years, and it ain't working. I mean,
There's vacant lots.
there's nothing new
In town.
commercially in the downtown except for the Walgreens and Silla's building. And all the quote-unquote new foot traffic didn't bring that, you know?
Yeah.
The people drive to Walgreens. I mean, I'm thrilled that Walgreens is here, but it wasn't because I'm living half a mile away. It's because it's closer than CVS, but.
The issue is the cost of the property. This is the issue. It makes it completely, not doing the building, not the business model. The business models do not support the cost of the property. So it doesn't matter how
So
many people.
that's,
are
I mean, so your analysis includes some discussion of more residents brings more
Yeah.
commercial.
Yeah.
We've heard that before.
I think what they're doing, correct me if I'm wrong, I think what you're doing is taking it from straight commercial to allowing apartments on top is what's making it affordable for a builder to come in and put something there. Because
Yeah.
commercial buildings specifically on its own without
Yeah.
the constant income from rental units is not, I mean, for example, $375,000 lot. They got that whole lot for $375,000, that's what I paid for the lot for my house. That's not really that much if you're talking about rental income on 23 units, which is what they would have been allowed to put in there had they done it that way.
Right.
Under this law. So I think the problem is that we're trying to get more businesses in there, but by getting more businesses in there, the only way to do that is to basically put apartment units.
Right.
And I don't know that this town will vote for apartment units in this
Like
downtown
if Silla's
area.
had 23 units above it,
Yeah.
we'd have like 8 coffee shops.
It'd be fantastic from a commercial standpoint, but you're not actually getting any more commercial businesses in there that are gonna generate taxes.
This
and
assumes they're gonna
possibly-
come in, they're gonna
Right.
flock in. That's what it assumes.
I hear what you're saying, and I agree that having vacant lots is terrible, and we want to get those buildings in there, but it's not the business that's gonna make any money, it's the rental units, and that's not this town's desire. I'm not speaking for myself, I'm speaking for everyone who vomits up every single day on Facebook's Norfolk community page. They do not want apartment complexes in the center of town. They just don't. And what you're saying is this 5-acre lot, right? The commercial building is not what is making money. So put in 23 units per acre, that's 120 units roughly. Put in the bottom floor,
An assisted.
a gym, great, mostly for the tenants that are there, because who's gonna go there when there's 125 people upstairs coming down to use it, right? And the other side is, I don't know, a laundromat, which is also allowed on here. Does Norfolk Center really want a laundromat?
Some people are.
Please.
No, I'm not.
99%
Susan,
of the houses
will-
here
I
have
will-
laundry,
but
so a
what I-
laundromat would be for those tenants. So
my-
it's still a business.
My point was less on that, it was more on the foot traffic question
Yeah.
that has been raised every time there's been any discussion about downtown, is that you increase foot traffic, you get the commercial. I'm just wondering if there is, theoretically, there's a tipping point, but no one's ever been able to tell me, because every time we've done something close to downtown, it's been,
Well,
Here's the
part
tipping
of it's a moving target too, the tipping point, because, I mean, it's,
I know it's gotta do with
Yeah.
land prices and cost of
Yeah.
living and the whole 9 yards, but at the end of the day,
it's also.
if we
rooftops
put all the
in certain
folks in
areas.
downtown and we don't reduce frankly, if we don't reduce the parking from 1.5 to 1, and they're all parking their cars, because if you're living downtown, hopefully you're getting on the train, well, half of them are more than, you're gonna look for a downtown apartment to get on the train, so your car isn't moving during the day. It's staying in the parking spot, which means it's blocking a potential commercial customer during the day if you're in fact getting on the train. So there's this sort of dynamic between more a livable downtown, which is featured prominently, or vibrant, I think is the word that's used in a couple of points in your discussion. A vibrant downtown is great if you get the commercial and if there's restaurants and if there's a reason for people to come downtown. But if you reduce the parking in any way, shape, or form, people aren't moving their cars during the day, or some of them aren't. All you're doing is creating some of the traffic issues that were discussed relative to all the other things. I mean, reducing the size of the parking, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, these are the kinds of things that are gonna prevent people from being in favor of a bunch of downtown residential dwellings.
I think all of this is a very nice way, and you've put a fancy bow on it, of saying, we're gonna strike out all these rules that are in our current bylaws so we can allow 23 apartment buildings to go into a 1 acre lot. That's
Question.
really what this is about.
I guess it's a statement more than a question.
Statement.
But building on what Susan was just saying, I feel strongly about a recommendation I would give to you for purposes of town meeting, which is, no one's gonna make it through this stuff at town meeting, right? The only people that are gonna make it through this stuff at town meeting are anyone with a vested interest in one of these particular bylaws. Either a developer looking to build a 23-unit residence, or someone who's read this enough to know that that's what's coming, they don't want it. The rest of this stuff's gonna be lost on everybody. I think I understand it, and I'm glazed over right now. My recommendation would be, create an executive summary, right? That's in human, understandable language, not in bylaw speak, about what is the planning board's mission, right? What is the goal in this B1 district? What are you looking to incent? What are we looking to drive? What are we looking to prevent, right? In a way that everyone can understand it. And then as we go through each of these articles, say, this article, we're looking to change all this language, and let's then relate it back to the mission statement you started with, so people can actually understand and digest. Me voting yes or no on this article will result in meeting that objective. Because without that, we've been trying to parse through what are we really looking to do? We don't want a big grocery store. Are we really looking to try and get 23 units? Like, we're trying to parse this out and look at the hidden meaning behind why are we redlining this and striking that and adding this language, and we're trying to discern what's the objective here, right? And I think it's a fair ask, not only for us here, but for town meeting at large, is just tell us that in plain English. What is the objective that we're trying to get with the inclusion of these articles?
I think that's a great point. I mean, unless people have a pretty strong positive vision in their mind, the negatives are gonna just pop up based on their personal experience. I think we've had a pretty extensive discussion. Before we go on to Article 7, Rich, is there anything that now, we're talking about the wisdom of something and directions and plans. Is there something factually not correct, or is there something you wanted to clarify? Or should we just go on to Article 7?
No, we can go on.
Okay.
Not to mention, just real quick, doesn't have to do with one specific topic,
Sure.
just to point out what he's saying. We listen to these kind of presentations regularly. We know what questions to ask. We're not highly emotional in this, because we've been doing this. We're at 8:30, an hour and a half in on Article 7. What do you think's gonna happen at town meeting when all of the emotions and every single person gets up to speak that has an opinion on this?
I think that's an excellent point.
I don't think you're gonna get I think you're gonna end up having 2 town meetings, just to.
100%.
The last town meeting had nothing to do with the center of town, and we went till 10:30. I mean, we were almost cutting it. I'm saying that this is too much in one town meeting, when you've got a lot of residents here who have a lot of opinions. And I don't think you're gonna get through it in a town meeting. You're gonna end up having to have a second special town meeting. It's gonna be a cluster, and it's.
Yeah, and you guys are putting it first, so we'll be diving into it quickly. Yes, I agree with that. I do think this runs a pretty big risk of us going into 2 days. If that's what has to be, it has to be, but.
Schedule 2 nights, just in case.
Yeah, so Article 7, in the spirit of keeping going, Article 7, please.
I've got 2 nights in my calendar.
So, Article 7, what there's been discussion through the planning board, to change the, how site plan approval is administered, as well as the criteria associated with it, as far as what requires site plan approval, what level of site plan approval. One of the things in the present bylaw, there is a section where essentially you fill an application, you potentially do not have to go through any approval process through the planning board. It's called notice of non-applicability, then there's a site plan exemption, and then there's a full site plan review part of it. What we're proposing to do is clean up some of the language, but then also the determination end of it would be shared by the building commissioner's position and the town planner position to determine what level somebody would have to go through from a permitting standpoint. One of the issues that we have on the present bylaw is that someone might have an existing commercial site with no site plan in place, and depending upon what they try to do as far as maybe bringing a different tenant, there's certain criteria. If you don't go beyond that criteria, you don't need to go through the site plan approval process through the planning board. However, there are some criteria in there right now that are subjective, and so what we're proposing to do is clean that up as well, and then have it tiered, and have hopefully a little bit more clarity on how things will be processed through the permitting. There was discussion about it going through all through the planning board, and they would make those determinations, because right now it's the building commissioner, and then if you need modification or full site plan, you would go to the planning board. The way the planning board had the preferences to keep what we have in place, but just modify it, so it would be still building commissioner, and then the town planner, and then the planning board. So it's hopefully kind of clear up some of the language, make it a little bit more readable, and then just.
I appreciate the intent here. So this is am I wrong? This is 5 pages long, single spaced? The single.
Yeah.
They include all the sections that are amended.
5.
Yeah.
Does Article 7 in any way have synergy with or pertain to Articles 1 through 6?
No,
Article 7 really stands by itself.
stand by itself.
Is there any way we could remove Articles 7 through 10 from the warrant?
For what
Remove them?
purpose? I mean, I think this makes more sense than the first 6 articles.
But I'm just saying,
It's a process article, it's a process article.
But-
We've absolutely gotta do the one on the zone 2 for the watershed, for the
okay.
whole.
What I'm trying to get at is just the first 6 articles on B1 require a huge amount of mental heavy lifting. Just kind of speaking to their point, perhaps the ship has sailed, but how many zoning things do we wanna give people at once?
Well, I think you at least need to take Article 7 down to a synopsis, and a much more in-depth synopsis than, sorry, gotta find it, than to see if the town of Norfolk will amend F11. I mean, that's not a description.
No,
If you want, you're talking about 5 pages, if you want them to vote on this and understand it without asking you 100,000 questions, you need to give a full paragraph that says, basically in layman's terms, like Jonathan said earlier, hey, everybody, I know this is a lot of information, but it really only affects you if A, B, or C. This is something the town needs to do for X, Y, and Z. That's it. Then you can put everything else in there, but you're telling them, you don't necessarily have to understand it. We explained it to the advisory board, which is the purpose of this board, is you explain it to us. We do our best to understand it with research and explanations, and then we say, you should vote yes on this, you should vote no on this, this is our position. But if you don't do that, you're gonna end up, just this one article alone is probably gonna have, no one's gonna understand it. I just sat and listened to you and I still don't know what you said. I'm not trying to be a jerk, I'm really not, that's not what I mean. I'm saying I'm trying to read this as you're going, and I'm like, I think a synopsis of what it's about.
Yeah, so we I mean,
A good
A
paragraph.
drawing might help, because you're talking about making a three-tier structure, something very basic.
Right, like the top of page 11 is helpful, but I think saying it was this, like saying what,
Before,
again, what
after,
the, yeah, what before is, what the next date would be, and
Yeah.
why
Just a
we're
basic
making the
drawing.
change, right?
so we didn't say this at the beginning, we had already planned on having a synopsis available at the town meeting, available for people to read. Not to get back to the B1 stuff, we have FAQs that we've published and put them out on the website. If people have the opportunity to read them, questions come in. We're gonna be updating those questions with other district questions, so we are, I think, making efforts to try to explain some of that stuff, and we will do the same thing for this. So point taken, I understand.
Unfortunately, when you're changing bylaws, we're really required to put in front of the town all the words, even if it results in 5 pages of what are you talking about?
We're not saying don't
No, I know.
publish the bylaw, we're just saying we can't read the bylaw to people at town meeting and say, so what do you think? Is everyone good?
Oh, I get it,
Right?
I get it.
Like, for example, last spring, when we changed the pronouns, you know, I happened to be the one that wrote that, the
Recommendation.
recommendation for that. And so in mine, I actually stood up and said, just so you know, this is what it applies to, this is how you will be affected. It really doesn't affect you in these ways.
Yep.
Because people are looking for an explanation, and when you don't give them one, their mind jumps all over the place. And even with that explanation, somebody went on to the Norfolk community page and basically bashed everything I said and told, and.
Don't worry, I stepped up.
Right, thank you, I appreciate that, but they were like, oh, so now I have to change the way I speak. Like, it did not matter what I said, they still changed it. But it would have been way worse had I not said all of those things at town meeting. So that's what I'm saying, there needs to be something written. It can't just be on advisory to understand these 5 pages, right? It needs to come from the planning board, the synopsis, and then advisory will read that and make a decision based on that. I just don't think you're gonna get through that at town. It's too much information for them at once. So we did that, we published that, but we gave them a synopsis of how it actually affected them. And that, I think, was helpful. Correct.
So, yeah, go ahead. Dan.
Having already volunteered to write the summaries of this, I'm aware of this one. And I actually went to the planning board meeting on Monday, as well as the selectmen's meeting last night.
Hmm.
So I think I have a good handle on that.
Okay.
I was wondering if you were gonna pull back your volunteering to write all
I'm
the
really thinking about
recommendations
it
for
based on
all
the fact
these.
that there was 4 when I volunteered, and now there's 9, so thank you so much.
Is it segment to the Board of Selectmen? You mean the select board?
The select, I'm an old man, I apologize.
Again,
We forgive you.
I found a couple things that may be technical issues. I just suggest checking it again, like there's an apostrophe after his, and I believe his is already possessive. There's
What page?
also, what's that?
What page?
Page 7, F. There's also, sometimes it says full site plan approval, and other times it says site plan full approval.
Yeah.
That is a bit confusing.
Shouldn't be
I
a
think you
comma.
mean full site plan approval generally. Because it's either a modified site plan or a site plan, or a full site plan. I would just check these 5 pages to make sure there aren't more errors than I found.
Not just to come back on you, but the his possessive is supposed to be his comma her, based on a recommendation from the spring.
No, it should
I-
actually
Said
be
I-
they. It should be they if
Oh,
you're,
you're right,
it shouldn't be
correct.
he, she.
You-
But-
oh, you carried that one, so.
Sorry.
So,
Grammar.
providing some input there, are there any topical questions about 7?
Can I ask one quick question? On Monday night, the planning board voted to adopt some changes that were recommended to them. These are in here?
They are.
Okay, thank you.
Article 8, parking areas. 2 paragraphs long, all right. And Bill, I appreciate the comment about, that we're required to print we have to print the entire article, but again, there's just so much mental bandwidth that
Oh, I understand.
citizens have. Like, I want them to
Yeah, I
come
get
next
it.
time.
I'm not sure I'm gonna pay for some of it.
I just wrote the intro inviting them to come, anyway, okay.
Yeah.
Please show up, please come again. Article 8.
No, simplistically, it's changing zoning board of appeals to the planning board if somebody's looking to get a special permit to not park in the front yard.
Okay.
So, but I think both boards agree on it, and.
Supply it is commercial only, right?
Correct.
Yep.
Yep.
Commercial, okay. Questions about the parking modifications?
Well, you're not modifying the parking,
It's just.
you're only modifying who you ask.
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
That one, I don't think
The
anyone's
appeal
gonna have a
authority.
problem with.
Yeah, you
Is
should
there-
ask first, make people feel like we got some out of the
Right?
way.
You should switch that to Article
Easy,
1.
easy,
Yeah, really
easy.
get some success, some steam
Yeah, we
going.
did it, that's so
Article
easy.
9, feel the momentum.
9 seems like a date switch.
This is the water protection.
This is the important water one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the,
Update the town zoning map.
correct, for the new Holbrook Street well, so. To put that well online, this is hinging on this. This is one of the things that's hinging on, so if it doesn't pass, probably,
There was just an issue, right, in the spring, did you fix whatever the issue was that was holding it up the first time? It was on someone else's property, running through, isn't this the one that was running through someone's property and that was the problem
No.
with it?
The issue in the spring was that there was additional pumping tests that were done, so the actual Zone 2 area itself expanded from that one that was in the spring. The issue, the other issue that came up at town meeting was that there was a residents that wanted to have other communities, Zone 2s, protected under our local aquifer protection bylaw, because there are Zone 2s that, you know, based on the geography, they're in one town versus the other. The DEP does not require towns to protect, from a land use standpoint, other municipalities Zone 2. So that was one of the issues that came up earlier.
So the other way of saying that is those zones are still protected from a permitting process, but it's a
So those wells are
different, it's a
protected.
different permit beside the planning board.
Yeah, they're protected from Department of Environmental Protection, so.
But in the case of a property in Norfolk, it would be the Conservation Commission. That would be the first stop, right?
Not for this was,
So
Could
if
this
I
could-
wanted to build, if I lived in a town's, if I lived in Franklin Zone 2,
Mhm.
but I lived in Norfolk, and I wanted to build a building on my property, who knows, who gets jurisdiction on that?
so you have the Zone 2.
Yeah.
sit-
So if I'm tripling the size of my house, and I'm on a property that is in Franklin Zone 2 or Walpole Zone 2,
It really
who's
is.
the first,
for-
who's the
from a
first
house-
permitting board I talk to?
Yeah, so from a house standpoint, it's really it would be the septic system. That's where it would come
Okay.
into, so.
So it is,
Ro-
it's the Board of Health,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
all right.
But
I
but
believe
it's
But from a
covered.
planning board
It's
purpose
covered.
And a zoning map purpose, it doesn't need to be on our map.
Correct. So there's a sanitary piece. Then there are uses that you try to, within the Zone 2, you try to, the overall goal is you don't want potentially hazardous
Right,
uses
no.
or, you know,
I
going to the
understand the
ground.
goal, I'm
Yeah.
just wondering who gets the first bite at it, and it would be our Board of Health. Okay, because they're enforcing,
Well, this is the zoning though. I mean,
I understand that, but, so when I propose building a building on my property, I'd come to the planning board, they wouldn't actually necessarily say, but I go to the Board of Health because I have to expand my septic system, and they say, you realize you're
they've
in a-
got their piece.
you
Yeah.
realize you're in a Zone 2
Correct.
recharge area.
Yep.
Okay.
It's just
But-
mission critical for people to understand that the town got authorization to borrow $2.6 million to build this well, we're on track. We will not be able to finish that without this.
I understand that.
I know you
just
do, I
wanna
just
make
wanna
sure
make sure.
that someone else's well isn't getting polluted because we're
course.
ignoring stuff, so.
Got it.
So there's still the, yeah.
Okay.
That would be helpful to note this in the little recommendation write-up. I'm not sure who has this one, but
Dave,
Me,
here we go.
He has all
all
planning
Look at
board.
that.
I
One-stop
stupidly
shopping.
volunteered
I
for four.
think it's 10 too,
10.
because
Shut
there's planning board, I'm sorry, it says planning board.
It's probably
Okay,
worth mentioning
10.
this is an extension of that project and
Planning.
allocated expenditure. Article 9,
So just one
Oh,
other
sorry, go ahead,
question
Doug.
on the dates. Last year sometime, we talked about the dates, and I thought there was some sort of motion to get rid of the dates and have it be the most current
current.
GIS poll. Is this different than that update we had, or how did, I don't know how this would interfere with
So
the
the-
piece.
The map, the one that we did last year,
Yeah.
actually in November, I think it
Yeah.
was. So prior to that, the Zone 2 delineation of it was through the Department of Environmental Protection, so it was they were the ones that our bylaw was telling anyone to go look for. And they don't have paper anymore, it's online.
Yeah.
So one of the lingering issues with the other permit was to have a paper copy that people can come in and inspect and shows the zone twos for our towns that represent it. So what we did is we overlaid it on top of the zoning map, so you'll see both there.
Okay,
And it's in paper and digital form,
okay, okay.
and that's what we did
Alright.
for that.
I think 8, 9, 10,
Yeah.
they're golden on those. 8, 9, and 10 is easy.
But every time this changes, this map changes, we'd have to redo the bylaw to update it.
Yeah, so if we change the map, we have to change the date.
Right?
Wouldn't
That's
you-
the,
But, yeah,
is there
it
a way
seems
to have a
annoying.
perpetual, yeah, yeah.
So instead of having an absolute reference, can you make some kind of relative reference? The latest of, or the most current?
And how do we know November 19th is the right date, cause that hasn't happened
That's the day
yet?
we adopted a town meeting.
Oh, okay.
That's why that's the 19th. It's
So
'cause
that is
that's the
because
day it
as
becomes-
of.
Oh,
becomes
yeah.
the zoning
In
map on the
effect.
day that
Yeah, that-
town meeting
interesting.
votes for
Right.
it. Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
it goes back to town,
Unless this gets delayed to the 20th, cause it's a 2-day meeting.
Right, that's
well,
it.
That's a really good
They
point.
can either friendly amendment.
but the zoning, after the AG approval, goes back to town meeting date, that's the date.
So what they're asking is you can't change this November 19th to say, instead of saying November 19th, to say the most currently accepted. You know?
I'll look at them all.
It's just a thought, I mean,
Yeah.
so you don't have to go through all this each time.
Except you probably kind of want to put the
You wanna have the
map
date
before
on there.
town meeting.
Well, that's what I mean, no one will know what they're looking at. Well, no one will look at the map anyway, but.
Except for the people who
Well,
live there.
it
Right.
came, I mean, last time there was discussion on the map, right?
Yeah.
Because it,
That
it's
sounds
people, it affected people who live there.
On the- on
Article
the line of
10.
it.
Any,
Same thing.
any
It's related.
new information?
How come
you
they're
want
not the
to-
same?
There's different sections. So, in section C, it refers to the whole entire zoning map, so there's different overlays that are on there, and not just the zoning districts, so. The, section D is specific to the aquifer section of the bylaw.
Okay.
Any questions on Article 10? So at this point, we just went through 10 articles. I'd like to pause here and consider these and vote on them while it's still fresh in our brains. Thank you very much, Rich. Appreciate you sitting through all of our questions, hypotheticals, rapid fire ideas. I know this is a lot, but this is very helpful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So thank you. We'll let you go. More than welcome to stay or hang out if you'd like. We are going to just consider Articles 1 through 10. So let's start with some discussion. I almost want to start with Article 10 and go backwards because we have some consensus on that, but okay, let's just go back up to 1. Article 1, discussion. I think this is probably the most contentious.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I mean, I don't know if we're supposed to say how we'll be voting, but personally, I would be voting no on this. I think that it's, this one coupled with the other one is a workaround of trying to get Stop and Shop to give up the land so they can put apartments in.
And the
That's
primary
just what I
concern
think.
here is the elimination of the first sentence, making it
I think
unlimited.
by putting in no square footage cap on anything except a grocery store is trying to force Stop and Shop to give up that land so that we can put in 100,000 square feet of apartment buildings. Because if you couple that with the next one, I personally think that's what their intention is.
We're saying next one, you mean the next sentence?
No,
Next
no,
article.
no, not the next article. Next article number 2 was just about the height. Article 3.
Oh, okay, got it.
About the number of dwellings. If you couple those two things together, what it's saying is, okay, we don't have to put in a grocery store here. Stop and Shop, we're basically eliminating you unless you wanna put in a mini Stop and Shop the size of Brothers Market, which I don't think they're in the habit of doing. So you can't build anything here ever.
Oh, one of the little gas station things maybe, with a little mini mart? I'm just kidding.
I'm just saying, I don't think that's not a moneymaker for them, and they usually put those near their grocery
They do.
stores. So I think it's, whether they want to say it is or not, it's a way to get commercial business downtown. And since no one's really going to build a dance studio, we already have one. Not gonna build an ice cream shop, we already have Baskin Robbins. You're not gonna put in the 5th bank in the center of town. There's not a lot of stuff left to put in.
So I disagree. There are people very interested in putting another bank in downtown.
I'm just using that as an example. I don't think that's what the entire 8 acres is for. I think the entire 8 acres is intended to bring in a couple of small businesses to go on a first floor and make their money off of 130 apartment units.
So, understood the broader concern, narrowing down to just Article One, and
Just
I-
in
I-
Article
it
One,
has a role in that, I know,
By
so
putting in
yep.
no cap at all, except on grocery stores.
it creates opportunity for mischief is the concern. Now, other points.
It just feels a little disingenuous when he's saying like, we're lowering the cap for the grocery store, but it's like, yes, and you're removing it for everything else. That feels sneaky to me. I don't like the caps being removed at all.
I'd be fine if they're all removed or all the same.
Sure.
It does feel like it's a
Yes.
little targeted.
But he was like, we lowered the cap for
They
grocery
could put a
stores. It's
Target
like,
There's a mini Target going into my building in Boston, which is.
oh, really?
Yeah.
It's like this, it's less than the size of the Walgreens.
So just so everybody knows,
What are they?
and I won't participate, but I looked at doing a small grocery store and a restaurant in this area.
Perfect. I don't have a problem with you doing that.
I know,
I
I
have
just
a-
don't
I
think
have
I
a-
should
I have a-
be.
No, that's fine. I'm not saying you should vote. I don't have a problem with that.
Were you gonna do
Put in a
apartments
small,
on top?
I would love,
That's why I can't make it
absolutely
work.
love to see a Brothers Market go in there. But what I
I
don't
can't.
wanna
It's
see
too
is a laundromat and a gym and an ATM machine and 125 apartment units. That's what I don't wanna see. I live less than a block from that and I don't want to see
What would it
that.
take for you to build your building with all the things on top?
Cause you were just saying, not over
I
compare.
have no interest in that as a business, so
I'm just
that's
wondering
why I didn't do it, but the cost of land is so extraordinarily expensive that you cannot afford to do any other type of business without the apartments. So it's a circular issue, it's not, we don't need, it's not so much that there's a demand problem. It's not a demand problem, it's to make the economics work, you need to have,
No one will build until they can build apartments on top.
yeah.
Pretty
I-
much, except I don't think the majority
But
of this town wants
Apartments
to see
on,
apartments.
no, but apartments on top aren't the issue, it's, I don't think it's apartments on top of the issue, I think it's apartments behind and et cetera.
23 units per acre.
Because,
Well, whatever,
Yeah.
it
I
has
just
to be
mean-
mixed use to make the business case close.
right,
Yeah.
but there's mixed use and then there's
Yeah.
Well,
And
how
I-
a mixed use facade,
I think-
How does
residential behind it.
eliminating the, I'm not sure Article One directly pertains to mixed use.
No,
but it's the
if,
cap,
but if
really.
you have no cap, so essentially, and if I understood what he was saying, and if I understand what I have read here, what it means is, there's no cap for anything other than a grocery store.
Or
So as
variety
long as
store,
it's
yes.
not
Or
you,
variety.
right, as
Or
long as,
municipal, the municipal footprint can't be more than
right,
50.
okay, so as
Right.
long as it's not
Yes.
someone trying to put in a grocery store, anyone else
Right.
can build 46 feet high, zero cap on the square footage. They can put in 3 small stores across the front and put in 125 units behind. And I don't think that's what this town wants.
I mean, it could even
And
make
it's,
a two-row thing where one is an assisted living facility and the other is residential. They're basically all residential, except for one is.
Well, my comment on this is, I agree with, I think that's why I asked for what's the executive summary, what our objectives are, so I'm not
Totally agree.
disagreeing. But just looking at Article One on the merits of just what it says for Article One, it still makes no sense.
Right.
Because there was, I know I was mansplained too, that I just didn't appreciate the answer, but there was no justification provided as to why we would move from uncapped of every type to, or move from capped of every type to uncapped, except for the ones we had a cap for and now that has a lower. There's zero justification provided for that, and I can't recommend that we would vote for something without any explanation or justification of what is this intended to serve. The closest I heard to an explanation was, well, we're trying to preserve the look and the feel that people want in the town for businesses. They want pitched roofs and they want a walkable neighborhood, like, fine, so why are we allowing the 100,000 square foot warehouse? There's just no justification, I think, provided.
Well, it has to have a pitch roof.
Just forget the interaction with all the other articles, just on the merits of this
Yeah.
one, I don't understand what the
I
purpose of this is.
I absolutely agree. I don't think that their intention is to put in 100,000 square foot Four Kicks.
Right.
That's not what's gonna make them the most money, and that's, Four Kicks, a business like a Four Kicks couldn't afford to come in and buy those whole 5 acres. So the only thing that's going to make money is apartment units, which is why they're listing the cap.
So sorry.
I appreciate that, I think that point's been made. Speaking again strictly to Article One, I am sympathetic to them talking about more flexibility. I suspect that they are trying to encourage greater variation and variety, that they feel as though opportunities aren't being pursued because perhaps we're overly strict. But I also agree that going from 15,000 to nothing seems awfully generous. I don't think that this is quite targeted enough. But I think we have a pretty good sense. If somebody wants to go.
We can only go straight up or down, right? Like, there's no modification.
Yeah.
We have the ability to recommend an IP too, though, right?
We could,
Oh.
which is basically saying,
But I think if we do that, we have to keep in mind we want to IP a number of these.
Yeah.
What's an idea?
Indefinitely
Indefinite
proposed.
proposed, so that they would basically go back and
Fix the
fix it.
problems.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's three options. We oppose it, we support it, or we recommend essentially further study.
that sounds right, Susan?
Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're waiting for a proposal,
But it,
a motion.
it's the idea that if you're gonna do it on this one, you have to, Susan, relate it to the other ones that
Yeah.
make you.
I mean, I
concerned.
think that even if you take out the fact that, of what my personal opinion is about apartments, cause I'm just reading between the lines, if you just take this article by itself, it sounds to me like they're trying to push Stop and Shop out, which I don't actually
think they
have a
are.
problem
No,
with.
they are. They've
In all
admitted that.
reality, admittedly, I'd love to see something go in there, but it needs to be something that suits the town. So what they're doing is saying, we're gonna make it so hard for Stop and Shop to put anything here that they give up their long-term lease.
At the planning board meeting on Monday, they said that was one of the motivations, one of the specific motivations for this.
And I would argue the elimination of the other cap may be part of that, cause it makes it more saleable from Stop and Shop, from land banking it, to selling it to someone else who would want a big square
Right, so
footage pace
the
there.
appropriate thing to do is we're gonna cap any
I agree.
building at X,
Mhm.
Yeah.
or we're gonna cap a grocery store at X and any other building at X plus. Like, I just think this is one of those things that's, we're gonna regret.
If you vote
Regret
no,
this.
there's still a point to that we make a recommendation
Well, the
against
town can
this
still vote yes.
Yeah.
for not doing it because it is.
That's what the recommendation would contain.
That doesn't change the vote,
We're not,
but it. the
unless
write-up,
someone's
yeah.
prepared to write an alternative right now, we're either voting up or down or a substitution, and I don't think we're prepared to write a
I
substitution
think
right now.
that, I think that in theory, it'd be great if we could get Stop and Shop to release it. I think that is, I understand the planning board's issue and what they're trying to do, but I don't know if anyone remembers when there was the big, huge hoopla about the guy wanting to have the pig farm on Cleveland Street, right? And the whole lot of Cleveland Street opposed that. So what did he do? He sold it to a developer. So sometimes what you're trying to get rid of is is gonna be replaced by something worse. So I think I think our job as the advisory is to make sure that the town understands that as much as we'd like to see Stop and Shop do something with that land, they're basically holding us hostage, I get that. But by eliminating and putting in these things, we could end up shooting ourselves in the foot because we could end up with something that's way worse than an empty lot.
Understood, understood.
Could a 40B go there if they sold it to a developer?
I mean, I
40B
it
can
has
go
to
there
be-
anyway.
it
It
ha-
could go it could go there anyway, but it would
Apartments.
encourage
It
them
would be
to
an
instead say,
apartment.
fine, just.
Yes, it would be
Right.
23 units per acre with a store at the bottom, and 10% of them, I mean, it'd
It won't
be,
need the store.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean,
so it could be,
irrespective of these changes, they could go and do a 40B anyway.
yes. Yes.
I'll make a motion to IP this back to the planning board.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion to indefinitely postpone Article 1. Any further discussion?
I-
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay.
Nay.
No, you want to support the
She
indefinite
wanted
postponement?
No, I want
Oppose
to
it.
vote no altogether.
Okay, so,
I don't
all,
wanna postpone it.
one vote against the indefinite postponement, the rest are for.
And can I be on the record for abstaining?
With one abstention.
I make a motion to vote no altogether.
It's too late.
Fine.
The net result is the same, even if
It
we vote
is.
no, it goes back to them. to
It is, except I'm
redo
not
it.
I
sure
think an
that-
IP is a little bit more stomachable.
Okay, but I'm not sure that the town people will fully understand what
Town's full.
They will,
towns will
they're
understand.
gonna get it.
The moderator, I
So
think,
that
explains it.
This is
You're
clear,
going to-
someone's
By
gonna
the
get
way, in
angry
my
and
write-up,
there it
I'm going
goes.
to acknowledge that there was a disagreement, and it will essentially, it doesn't require you to speak on this, but it goes in anticipation of,
Okay,
Are you writing this up?
Yes, unfortunately.
Sorry.
He's gonna
All
be
right.
busy.
I thought it was gonna be five, I thought it was gonna be one of these articles entirely IP, so I blew it when I volunteered for that one, so.
Okay,
Extra help we can't.
No
do.
Indian given.
Okay,
I
Article
took it
2.
and I own it.
Okay, we're now discussing Article 2, height.
This is
I-
fine because
I'm
it doesn't.
going
I don't
to-
think, yeah, I don't have any problem with
Doesn't
this
discriminate
one.
against anything else, so
Right.
it's all
well, in
good.
46, I agree, it makes it so you can have the
Yep.
pitched roof, which looks way better than a flat roof, so, yeah, fine.
Any additional
I
discussion
recommend-
about the merits or drawbacks?
I
David?
recommend supporting this article.
Second,
So so there's a motion to, David, did you make a motion?
Yes,
to-
I did.
Okay.
That
There's
was
a second.
I didn't say it properly.
That's
I
okay.
knew what he meant though.
Any further discussion before we vote? Okay, all in favor of Article 2, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It is unanimous. Are you?
I'm abstaining.
Okay, and one abstention.
We wanna build a tall restaurant.
That's right.
No, it doesn't.
He wants to build a very short restaurant with a flat
Tiny
roof.
restaurant, 6
It's a
foot first
flat
floor,
roof.
and I'm gonna be the one that goes in.
Article
I'm with
3, dwelling density, units per acre. Okay, let the discussion begin.
I'm
Although
okay.
perhaps we've already had it.
Yeah, I think I've made my point clear on this,
Motion
I'm a
to
big,
IP
I'm a
Article
big-
3.
I'm a big
Is
X
there
on
a
this one.
second to the motion?
Second.
To IP. Okay, any
With a
additional
big,
discussion?
fat, never gonna happen.
My question would be,
23 units.
the further discussion I would wanna have is by not striking shall have no more than 2 bedrooms per unit. My understanding is we're actually in violation of fair housing law.
Right.
And that would be my concern.
Well, that's why in postponement, they can leave that piece
Oh,
in,
but
but
was the
take out
motion
the
to-
part
I
to
thought-
IP.
okay.
Yep, if we
Sorry.
IP it, our recommendation can be, keep this,
You won me over.
but take out
No, no, no,
increasing
no, wait,
16
what
to
did you say?
23.
I just wanna make
He's-
sure.
He's saying
Right.
it's discriminatory against the Fair Housing Act to say to not strike out the first part about the 2 units. But the problem that I think most of us had, if I'm speaking for everyone, is taking it from 16 to 23.
Except if we're talking like Article 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we IP it, that provision stays in effect.
It does, but we're asking them to rewrite it. Isn't that what IP
I
is?
think we're
Yeah.
hoping for a friendly motion, maybe the day of or some such thing.
All right, cool.
Like we're saying we don't like, just same as the first one, right? You
Right.
guys are willing to keep it in as long as it puts a cap on everything.
Now, what we could also do is we could defer voting, we could just not vote on this until town meeting, and then,
I don't think the planning board's
I don't
gonna
wanna do that.
revisit this based
very
on
good.
this.
So the vote stands. Any additional discussion before we vote on the indefinite postponement of Article 3 and the intended recommendation that we like the first part but not the rest? Okay,
Aye.
all-
One additional comment, so, and maybe this backs up to one we've already voted on, Article 1 and 2. Sorry if this is
no,
out of
please, go
order.
ahead.
David, you made a comment that the planning board meeting, they essentially said
They-
the objectives around Stop and Shop.
One of the objectives for reducing the size of grocery was to clearly
Yeah.
give Stop and Shop some comfort that if they released the land, the
Yeah.
Shaw's wouldn't go in there, or
So-
a competitor wouldn't go in there.
So my
They're
question-
worried about another large grocery
I
store
understand.
in the middle of all their Stop
I
and
understand.
Shops.
So my question that's not directed at anyone here, but just hypothetically, we asked very directly, and there was no response to that. We said, what's the motivation? We know that Stop and Shop is land banking. Why are we changing the square footage? And it was
He
just
wouldn't
like,
admit that.
and there was no acknowledgement of it.
Good
So
point.
my question again is,
They said it-
and why I'm
they
interrupting
said it all.
here to ask this question is, clearly, there's some goal, right? There's some objective with the collection of all of these.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe before we vote on all of these, I think it's fair to come back and say, why don't you explain to us what the overall objective is, and what are we trying to get out of these things? What is the expected result? Because, again, I feel like that question was unanswered, right, as evidenced by, they talked about it in planning board meeting, but wouldn't address it here. Maybe we'd vote differently if someone was to actually come back and explain the purpose of these in totality, and not just say, well, this one we're increasing the square footage, and this one we're increasing the height, and this one we're increasing the density, because we can't make heads or tails of what the expected outcome is gonna be without someone actually coming to explain to us what the expected outcome to be. I don't think that's an unfair question to pose to the planning board before we consider voting these things in or out.
Well, I think, speaking based on my knowledge to that point, I think that procedurally, we're out of time. Our options are basically well, no, because we're gonna have to indefinitely postpone. That's the friendliest thing I think we can do. I think that they can make those points on the floor of town meeting. I think that we could rise and say, hearing this, now that there's been this friendly amendment, or there's been this greater clarification, I, as part of the, advisory board or citizen, will now vote for this. So, I think there's still time for that to happen. We have to vote on this tonight in order to have closure for the warrant to be posted. There's the ship has sailed. I think part of the problem with the zoning articles, I think in general, it's good that they go through a large, like a public comment process, because for obvious reasons, but that also tends to delay things. So that pushes it back to the end of our timeline. We get it, we did send somebody there, thank you for attending, Dave, but
This is worse than usual, and I think
Yeah.
why
I
the
thought
not
they were trying
odds
to
at the beginning of this
sneak some
process
stuff
is that, no, I don't mean
It's
it.
pretty clear what they're doing.
I feel
think-
like they were sneaking it in though, right?
No, I don't think they were, because they said it out loud, but I think they did say it out loud in a public meeting with the cameras on them. Rich did. And I'm not faulting Rich, because I think it was the working group who came up with that recommendation. I think Blythe said about the timeline, to your point, is that this is more truncated than it usually is. I mean, the selectmen saw the planner last night.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. When
Yeah.
I said sneaking in, I didn't mean they were trying to be shady about why they were doing it, because you said they admitted it. He was. I don't think he wanted to admit
No,
it
he's,
as.
he's the one who said it.
And he also mentioned the brothers thing, the stop and shop
Yeah.
thing in
I
here
think,
tonight.
I think what I'm saying is we haven't actually had enough meetings. We probably should have had another meeting.
We
I
didn't
feel
have
like they
anything to
didn't
look at.
have
Right,
all of
until
this.
last night.
That's what I'm saying. I
We
feel
didn't
like
have anything to look But
we-
Blythe told
we
us
had
that
to
a month
have it
ago,
done
3 weeks ago,
tonight,
that
and
we
they
were
gave
gonna
it to
be.
us yesterday. I mean, that's
Well,
not.
that's what I mean by just our.
One of the reasons to
runway is
recommend an
gone.
IP is exactly
Yeah,
because of that.
this is better for the spring when everyone's had 6 months to digest.
I think too, like, it was really long and it's a lot to process. I think what he was saying was pretty clear. To have a vibrant town, to make it economically make sense for someone to build something, there has to be residential properties that are bigger, that are taller. And I feel like that's clear that that's their vision. And it's just if we agree or disagree with the pieces that they need. So I feel like this is really cleverly crafted to do everything they want to do.
And I
It's
think
just
it-
all in
yeah.
separate articles, so unless someone's putting it together at town meeting that night,
It was
they're.
originally
It was
one
supposed to be
article.
one.
It was.
Yeah, so-
And then I
It
think
got
it-
changed last night.
And I think the other question though is, if this gets postponed to the spring, will there be any different outcome? Is a question I have.
If they
right?
rewrite it,
And
it
that's,
might.
and that's,
And typically those zoning articles are done in the fall, because can you imagine a
Just in the
spring
budget.
town warrant with many more articles and these
Right,
10
school
articles?
budgets are in there.
Right.
So just speaking on behalf of this article, we just,
which one?
we just got a motion to indefinitely postpone, I believe, Article 3.
Can I ask
Oh,
a
yes.
question about that?
Go ahead.
Is the purpose of an IP on this because people in general don't agree with the second part, or don't think we understand enough about the second part and the reasoning?
I think it's that we don't understand enough about what their intentions are, and we're also asking them, we're saying as a board, we, in my understanding of IPs in the past, when we've done this, we will not support this if you leave it worded this way. So we tell them what we don't like about it, and we ask them to go change it. They can refuse, and then we say, which has standing with some people, doesn't have standing with others. We stand up at town meeting and we say, here's how the advisory board feels. This is what we think, and then we open it for discussion, and then as a person on the advisory board, you also have the right to stand up. So I can tell you that if the point's not getting across by what he says, I'll be standing up as a citizen, not as a
Yes.
as advisory.
I understand the wording concerns for Article 1, because to me it left it too open. In terms of Article 3,
I
just.
don't understand the wording concern. I
Well,
don't
for
understand
Article
what
3, yeah,
what
so
would
from
change.
my perspective, I do like the idea of increasing the residential density. I do like the idea of having more flexibility to blend commercial and residential. I understand that there's very good reasons why people might oppose that, so I don't have any language concerns with Article 3. I'm,
Same here,
Yeah.
Well, I think the other piece that hasn't been mentioned, we've mentioned it before, but the fact that it's not in line with fair housing. So I think that's another reason to IP it, is like,
Well-
we want that language in there, just not in addition to other stuff.
Well, but I think you and I are agreeing with that, or
Yeah, I would want it passed.
Right.
I would want it passed too.
I want it passed.
Okay.
There's a motion to IP it, but I would vote to pass, so
Okay.
I would be voting against the motion to
IP,
IP
okay.
it. Why?
I just think the other thing about IP is it's a friendly way, if you will, of helping everyone get more comfortable. We're all not ready. We all want a little more time because we'd like to be successful at whatever it is we're trying to accomplish. So you're not shooting it down, but you're saying, let's continue the conversation until we're ready. And maybe it's a separate town meeting just for this and nothing else. I'm not going woo-hoo for extra town meetings, but if that's the right way to deal with this, a really important topic for the town, you know, that's something to think
Can do
about.
that.
Other discussion prior to the IP vote, you'll be voting to either support
Yeah.
postponing this or against that.
So the number 23 has come out a lot. I don't see that anywhere in here.
16.
It's 16. It's the heart of it is it's moving from 16 bedrooms per lot to 16 units per acre. So-
16 bedroom, oh, wait.
Yeah, the previous one says no more than 16 bedrooms per lot.
He said,
Oh.
No, it's
Per
right
acre
here.
for any single
I know.
lot.
No,
Per
it says-
acre for any single lot.
So if you have an acre, you can put 16 bedrooms.
Shall
If you
not
have
exceed
two
a ratio of
lots, you can
16
actually put
bedrooms for
32,
any
right?
single lot.
No.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's what it says.
Well, it's
16
an acre-
bedrooms
it's
per
an acre.
acre for any single lot.
Per acre for any single lot
That's
is.
the new words. The old words that are crossed out are, except for assisted living facilities, shall not exceed a ratio of 16 bedrooms
right.
for any size lot.
Per acre. Are we
No.
looking at the same one?
No,
Those
no,
are for assisted living though.
the one that's crossed off, I'm reading says 16 bedrooms per acre for any single lot.
Brian, what are you reading?
1.4A,
I'm reading this, 16 bedrooms per acre for any single lot.
No, but if you read this part, residential densities except shall not exceed a ratio of 16 bedrooms.
Units per acre is what they're putting in.
That's what they're putting in, but
Right.
if you take out the part that they're putting in, it
Yes.
says a ratio of 16 bedrooms for any single lot or PLMD
Yes.
except by special permit.
And
And
then
this,
yes,
is for
for assisted
assisted
living,
living
correct.
only,
Right,
is 16 bedrooms per acre.
so the point is,
It says 16 bedrooms per lot and is in residential, or in assisted living was 16 per acre. They want to make that 16 per acre the standard for the entire
yes,
thing.
correct, that's what it says, yeah.
Yeah, that's all I was summarizing, is what
correct,
it
yeah.
said.
Sorry.
Got it.
Because it was being taken as make it 23 per acre for everything.
That's because that's the example he gave.
So
But
that
the
was,
language
Because,
doesn't
because
say
you
that.
can, you can
The
ask for
40B
special.
across the street is 23. is
yeah,
what
that's what
Yeah.
he said, is
He-
the 40B was.
Right, but he said because it's 16 per acre unless it's approved by the town.
Right.
He's saying it allows the town to approve up to
But-
20, he said
yes.
those
Yeah,
words,
yeah,
did he
yeah.
not say
Yeah,
it
he
allows
did.
the town to approve up to 23?
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is it allows the town to approve up to 23, so that's saying on that lot right there, 23 times 5, that's 120,
But with
19, whatever it is, thank you. I can't do that math in my head.
with a special
With
permit.
a special permit.
Right, but they're saying with a special permit, because that's what they're gonna do. I mean, that's
Well,
what
That's
it's
what they
saying.
can do.
That's
Yeah.
what they can
That's-
do,
yeah.
right,
Correct.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, any other, so again, there's a motion to indefinite postpone Article 3. All those in favor of indefinite postponement, please say aye.
Aye.
Can you raise your hands, just so Susan can count?
2.
All those again, 3. All those against IP
We have
in
a
it,
tie.
nays?
3 against.
4 against.
4.
Yeah.
Who's Brian?
Okay, so what are we gonna do?
Okay, so that defeats the motion to IP. What we can do is then submit
And
a
one,
motion.
excuse me one
One
second.
abstention.
I have to.
Are
abstain.
you abstaining from all of them, Mike?
Yeah, I think
Or-
anything that I talked about in.
Okay.
The zoning, I
In the
think.
zoning.
Okay,
thing is-
just so I know,
Appreciate
thank
that.
you.
So I can entertain a motion to approve Article 3, to recommend approval.
A second,
I can't make the motion. I just-
Motion to approve Article 3.
I'll second.
Okay, so we now have a motion to approve Article 3 as it's written. Any discussion about our vote? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, please
Aye.
raise hands.
1, 2, 3, 4.
And David, you are with the ayes, so that's 5. Nays?
Nay.
2 nays, one abstention, so Article 3 passes. Article 4. And are you also, is poor David writing up all this?
Yeah.
Yes, I volunteered for 5 and there's now 9 right now.
They're multiplying like Easter
I
rabbits. I'm
honestly
sorry.
expected the D1 stuff to get IP and it was gonna be easy. It's my own fault.
Moving on to Article 4.
Let me,
Discussion on Article 4.
It's just changing zoning to planning.
Yeah, the
It's not
appeals path.
changing anything.
Motion to approve, yeah. I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve Article 4. Any discussion prior to the vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. 0 nays, 1 abstention. Article 5.
This one confuses me, because the original proposal was to go from 1.5 to 1, and this sets this maximum 30, or maximum reduction of 30%. And I'm not sure that means it goes from 1.5 to 1.2, or
think that's what
something
it means.
else.
I think that's
But
what
he
it
never
means.
said that.
No.
I didn't ask
But
him.
is that math?
It's math,
Okay.
yes, it is.
It does that and also allows you to phase out peak for mixed use.
And that's the part that made me nervous.
Yes, I
About the
agree.
concept that if you buy an apartment down here, but you don't drive your car to work,
Yes.
you're occupying a commercial space.
And they can fill
during-
up the entire lot with a building, so there is no expansion area, and all of it will become unusable because there won't be enough parking downtown for the commercial
But it's okay,
spaces.
it will be the owner's problem.
You're right.
Which
But
was a
it-
ridiculous
but-
argument, because then in the next, he said that in that one, but in the next one, he's like, oh, but that's not our problem.
Well, the interesting, it is sort of interesting because I take the train in every day, and there are a number of cars who park behind the Santander building in that, whatever that, country crossing, what's it called?
Yeah.
There's
Country
cars that
crossing.
park there and take the train in every day. And you put in more parking, and they're gonna do it. They're not getting ticketed, and maybe they know somebody in
Because
the
they
building.
can't get ticketed because it's
I
up
know,
to the
but they're also
person who
not
owns
getting,
that building to
they're not
ticket
getting
them.
towed.
My brother lived with me, he took the train and he was in culinary school, and we knew someone who had a business in that building, Paul Keating, he used to have a military business and
Yep, I know,
grocery
Elite.
thing
Yep.
in there. And he said, cause he was our neighbor and friend, he's like, hey, park there whenever you want.
Right, that's
So he
fine.
said, okay.
That's fine.
So my brother parked there for a month, and then somebody else who has building there came and left a note on his car that said, stop parking here. I mean, he did just to be nice, because he was like, I'm not gonna be a jerk, and he just paid for parking, because he didn't wanna
Really?
cause any problems. But what I'm saying is it's up to them, which means every one of these businesses and homeowners, it's gonna be up to them to get people out of their parking spots.
But they,
It's not
none
about
of
how
those
you call a tow
people,
company.
yeah, but none of those people own the building either.
It's the property owner, it's not the tenants.
Right.
It's Tim Holmes owns the building.
Yeah.
Well, so
Well,
to me, I read this and it seems like it's giving the planning board the authority to waive required parking ratios up to 30%. So this isn't a directly related example, but, so I used to own a property in Jamaica Plain, and I turned it into a condo, and went down to both the planning board and the Jamaica Plain Community Association, and got raked over the coals because I was turning something into 2 units that was 1, and they wanted me to have more than 2 parking spaces. And I was trying to explain to them that all the people who I rent to currently all use bikes. They walk to the train station. I went to that particular planning meeting on my folding bike that was right there, and I worry that there's parking lots everywhere.
Yep.
And sometimes the ratios cannot really account for individual circumstances. I know that we all have examples. I mean, I now see a line of cars when the commuter rail train comes in, and that worries me. But I don't draw a straight line between this shouldn't happen because this is gonna make parking better. To me, this gives people more discretion. I don't see that as necessarily causing the problem
I
and
just
making it
think-
worse.
Well, I think in Jamaica Plain, you probably, I mean, I'm not from here, it's Boston, pretty much. A lot of people in Boston don't have cars. You're gonna be hard pressed to find
It's-
somebody in Norfolk who doesn't have a car. Even if you take the train to work every day, you still need a car to go grocery shopping, you still need a car to go to a restaurant.
But not 2
There's-
cars, right? If you're living in a 1 or
Right.
2 bedroom, if you're
So-
living around here in a
okay,
1 or
but-
2 bedroom, you're gonna have 1 car. You're not gonna have 2 necessarily. And I
Yeah.
watch, if you watch the planning board meetings, they did a bunch of studies around how many cars people have in these types of units, and it wasn't 2, it was less than 2. And that was why they initially had an article, is my recollection, to actually make it go down to 1. They nixed that article, and this is the replacement, is that, or is this
Yes,
just-
it is.
Right, so this was to say, okay, fine, we know that the public is not going to, everyone has the anecdote, right, about how everyone has 2 cars, I do as well. But the data shows otherwise, so this is a way to have a compromise, right, where we don't have to put it in as one, we can put it in as one, 1.5, but give a waiver.
It's just giving people the
Think of Silla's
discretion.
parking lot, it's always empty.
Right, exactly, there's not a parking.
There's like way too many, I understand you can't use that with your commuter rail, but the point is they had to hold to this standard. And now the parking lot's too big and it's wasted space that has to be maintained, that basically stores snow 3 months out of the year.
Right,
So,
Which
well,
maybe is a good use,
right.
actually,
Yeah, I was
now that I'm
gonna
thinking
say.
about it, so forget it.
Let's argue.
right, like, it's.
Right, but hypothetically, it's no longer Silla's in 10 years, 5 years, 4 years, next year.
My-
And it's now a Chili's
Well,
that
it's
is,
like-
that
That's
has
up
got
to Chili's to
a
buy it or
100.
not buy it with enough parking.
No, but I'm just saying, now it's not a Chili's, fine,
but
that's
what-
a chain.
but-
It's now any restaurant that's not a coffee shop,
But
where
there's
people
never
are
gonna
in and
be,
out for 5
I
minutes.
think the point of all this is there's never gonna be enough people to support that anyway, so
Well, if
like,
they put in 125 units, there might.
See,
but those people won't have cars, apparently.
I think
Maybe we'll
these
get
things
Ubers.
are,
Well, please, one at a time, go ahead.
we just turn a blind eye to all these problems that we create in parts of town and then just pretend it will never happen. We have Four Kicks as a perfect example of this. We have the, empty commercial residential place on corner of Boardman and Main, and we're sitting here saying this would never happen.
Right.
And it does. I mean, I think we're over litigating all of these zoning regulations on this valhalla of development that's not coming. We're not solving the core problem of, the reason we're not getting development is not because of the parking regulations that we have. There's some, I don't know what the problem is, you
I
probably have a better
know what
idea.
the problem is,
But,
and the town doesn't have those levers, so they're trying to do something,
Mhm.
yeah.
Can I ask a question about the Fork Fix problem?
Yeah.
How would giving the planning board discretion to reduce the parking requirement by 30% cause the Fork Fix problem?
So it's not that, I'm in favor of.
that's the
giving-
example I keep hearing.
No, I brought up that example, so
Okay,
I'd
go
love to
ahead.
be able to
Yep.
speak to it.
Okay,
It is not the fact that it can be waived, it's the striking of the requirement that says you need to reserve space in case we're wrong, and we have the right to revisit that every 3 years. That's
Got it.
the part that
Got it,
really
okay.
annoys me,
Yep, the
is
future.
we will build it one way before we ever have one customer show up, and then have no flexibility after that.
and I think, Coach, so to your point, and then he, I think, addressed that by saying it's barely enforceable anyway, the 3-year revisions, trying to go back, that they have great difficulty in
well, our
sort of doing
lack
that.
of being willing to
Yeah.
enforce things shouldn't be a defense of not
Not
having
having
good
the
rules.
rules.
We're
It
gonna
shouldn't
not-
be defensive striking our ability to make such an argument.
Yeah,
Understood.
yeah, that sounded silly.
Right,
Right.
you can't, it's,
Other comments on that issue?
It's
or-
really hard for me to cook dinner, so I'm never gonna do it. Right, like,
well, no, I think a better argument for that would be, it's really hard to keep kids from vaping. So let's don't even try,
Yeah,
and
let's-
let's just
yeah.
keep selling it everywhere.
How would you get
Wait a
Fort
minute,
Kicks to
that's-
expand their parking lot? We'd have to send people there at
That's-
peak times, counting the kids, crossing the street, like, I think they're saying that, I agree it's not a great reason, but the red tape around that, to get Fort Kicks to admit they have a problem and then spend the money
we
to
have
add
the red tape
spots.
holders. We have, the planning board shall determine the authority regarding the future use of such park.
not to harp on an issue, but Four Kicks can't expand their parking lot because they're basically in the middle of a wetlands, so they're as big as they're gonna get.
But, so
But
there's
that's the
other
point.
levers.
They
But I mean,
they
I
don't
think, but the
reserve
flip
it.
side of that
That's
is
the
that
point.
when they
The
built.
facility's too big.
Jonathan,
There's other
and I-
levers.
So they built a smaller
I mean,
facility.
My kids
That's
played
my
at Four
point.
Kicks 10 years before your kids played, I think, or 5 years before. And there was always parking. It's gotten worse
See, but we
because
do
it's a
have the
much more
levers,
popular
well, we do have the levers,
entity, but-
so fine, they can't build new parking, we ought to be able to revise the maximum occupancy.
Maybe, yeah.
So we have the
Yeah.
ability to control these situations. If we don't want kids running across the street and parking in the beer store and getting hit by cars, we don't have to be like, yep, they can't build any more parking. We can say, well, you're gonna reduce the occupancy to match the parking space that you do
I
have.
don't know.
Fort Kicks
How
in
about-
town.
How about have a cap on the size building that can go in the first place?
It's not gonna affect the Four Kicks is outside
Okay.
that area.
Well, I'm just saying,
Job
the
ranks
point
4
is,
times the size.
I would agree that our unwillingness to prevent or resolve these problems shouldn't be a justification of redlining out our ability to resolve them.
Yes,
Which
that's
is my
So-
read of this
That's
thing.
crazy.
Okay, so conceptually, this seems to then do two things. It seems to want to give flexibility up to 30%, which I like, but it also is eliminating an important lever that we think could have value. Perhaps if this article did one but not the other, it would garnish more support.
Yes, it'd have my support if it did.
So then it has to be IP, because
Okay.
they don't have time to write it
So
before
is
town
there
meeting.
do we have an IP?
I make a motion to IP it.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to definitely postpone Article 5. Any discussion prior to the vote? Okay, all in favor of IP in Article 5, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? One abstention. Article 6. This is, I love the list, you know.
Can I ask a question about this one? So in this one, if this one passes, but there is a cap to the building, that would limit how big a potential business commercial space would be. This is really just approving mixed-use buildings, is that right?
Well, this one is the one that, it's the mixed-use building, yes, but it's the one that says you can have a really tiny store in the front and then a giant apartment complex behind it.
Okay.
And
Where
There's
does
some
it say
no,
that?
there's some definition around what a
Describes
principal building
and
is.
secondary building, and it talks about how the
Okay.
principal building has to be bigger, more prominent, and it has.
Right.
So they're trying to keep some proportionality to it, not just have the commercial be a throwaway.
I just, my general comment is the secondary building of all residential is not what the purpose of the commercial district is.
Exactly.
And it's not mixed use, I mean, mixed use is in fact apartments and mixed buildings all in the same footprint, it's not.
I see what you're saying. Because it's a second building, it's not mixed
That's my own
use.
opinion on
Okay.
what mixed use is, it's not
So-
a definition I want.
But couldn't you say, well, they're basically then saying, let's revisit the intent? I understand what you're saying, the intent
Right.
of being one is to be exclusively commercial. Okay, well, let's
Well,
revisit
no,
the
I
intent.
mean, I'm not opposed to mixed use, I think that in fact, apartments over commercial is what a New England town center is in a lot of ways. I wish we had more time to see what would happen if they combined the two lots where Bork's and the building next to it is, which is a real possibility.
Hmm.
I mean, how many,
Who owns it?
a couple different people, but if they had an opportunity to sell to someone who wanted to put a big residential building behind a storefront in the front, it's an issue. And I don't have enough information on what potential build out.
For 194 Main Street, there's already a 40B, that's where Bork's
Proposed.
is, proposed, I think it's 60 units,
I thought it
60 or
was
72.
72.
On that property, that's already, been presented to the town, so, what,
Have they formally filed?
yes,
Have they formally filed?
I believe they have.
Are they gonna be one bedrooms?
It's a 40B, it has to be a mixture of 1, 2, and 3.
Which,
And it was proposed to be an over 55 development, I'm also need to double check with Rich whether it's still that or
Where are they gonna eat
not.
breakfast if they close Bork's? That's the
understand.
important question.
Can I ask another question? Would this actually help our town attract people, attract developers?
I think that's the
Like,
idea,
is this
yes,
gonna
the
make
answer
the
is
boards,
yes.
is this gonna make the
The
boards
answer is
thing
yes.
so great? Yes?
I mean, that, not for me, cause I have no interest.
No, yeah, I'm
But,
just-
but I,
From your perspective. Someone might actually buy the Bork's building and combine it with another, like, someone would look
Yes.
at that, okay.
Mhm.
yeah, definitely, it's happening next to Dunkin' Donuts.
Well, I think Blake
Okay.
said somebody has proposed for the Bork's building.
The
Oh.
owner of the Bork's building, Mr.
Right.
Quaglieri.
Oh, okay. It is already, I think, before our zoning board.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
he already wants to build apartment units there?
He's
Yeah,
already
40B.
submitted a 40B for that.
So how is that gonna, I mean, this is a,
I
this
raised
is
it
a
because it
completely
was-
different
someone raised the
discussion, but
idea.
I mean, I just, one-bedroom apartments, which is what they were talking about, taking out the 2 bedrooms, making them 1 bedroom. You're asking for, like we were talking about, people with 1 car who take the train and who shop, right? Great, that's fine. If, within a certain limit of how many you're talking about, Norfolk isn't that kind of town. We don't want too many, we don't want 10 apartment complexes in downtown Norfolk. That's just not the
You can't
look we're.
control that.
No, but I'm just saying, that's not what the town would want. But what I'm saying is you're talking about a 40B with a mix of, that's gonna house families. And I don't think,
Yeah.
we already are talking about a $20 million increase to Freeman just to, house the students that are currently living here that are coming in. And you're talking about building 72 units.
There's a
It's
chicken and egg
60 or
problem.
I know.
72.
There's a chicken and egg problem, so you have to generate the revenue somewhere.
And if
This
we
is
don't
a-
do, if we don't do something like this, a 40B could go there anyway, and then we have
Right.
no commercial, and the town is not bounding it in any way.
One of the questions I have about this one taken with some of the other ones is, I think you have to look at this in
interpretation of the Stop and Shop or whatever it is site, where what they're trying to do is say, you can't build anything big there, it's not gonna be a threat, you can sell it, somebody can put something on the primary road and basically rezone it or residential behind it, and that increases the land value, cause it's not a commercial rate you're trying to get, which is already inflated, but you can price it out at what you could turn that into effectively a residential zoning. And that's my interpretation of this, is it's getting the land bank to sell.
Well, commercial may help alleviate some of the tax base, but residential is where any of these people make money. Commercial
Right,
property is
yeah.
$27 a square foot.
Yeah.
Residential in Norfolk is what, 211 last time I looked, something around that?
Yeah.
So you're definitely making your money on the residential, you're not making your money on the commercial.
Right.
I don't know how much more in taxes commercial's paying, I don't know that it's significant enough to, I mean, something like a Target, a Stop and Shop, a Lowe's, a Home Depot, the rent them outlets, yes, those create a large tax base for rent them in Plainville. We're talking about putting in something the size of Scylla's, a laundromat, we're talking about pennies.
Right.
We're not talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, not gonna alleviate our $20 million school problem, nor is it gonna alleviate our $17 million fire department problem. It's going to create a revenue income stream for the builder, for the developer. That's what it is.
I have a question, and I guess this is just for people who've been on the committee for a long period of time, like, I'm comfortable with Article 6, but I'm like not comfortable if there's no cap. So like, my gut is saying like, I don't wanna vote for this if there's not gonna be cap, cause if one passes a town meeting and I recommended this, now that it could be a, 40,000 square foot Hobby Lobby, right?
Well,
Like,
yeah, what-
so I just, how would you?
Folks can share different perspectives on this. I mean, on the one hand, what was it that he said about kind of like perfection? I mean, I don't want to do something reckless,
Mhm.
but by the same token, will this generally improve? And
Okay.
the way I look at it is, yes, I mean, I understand that a huge anchor business is not gonna descend from the sky because this article passes.
Right.
But it's gonna tether some residential growth to commercial growth. So incrementally, does that make things somewhat better tomorrow as opposed to today? Could this be crafted with, more penalties or more restrictions? I mean, I'm also one where I prefer local discretion, whether it's in the courts, whether it's in the planning board. That's just my preferences. I wanna give the judge, I wanna give the planner, I wanna give the administrator the latitude to me, do the job that we're paying them for, which is not screw the town over.
Okay.
Now, having said that, we have made mistakes and we wanna learn from them, and people are bringing up valid mistakes and examples, so we all have to figure out what the right way is to, I think, learn from those. So that's my 2 cents about
Okay.
how beautiful something has to look before I vote for it. Do other people wanna?
I think this is on a path to actually say we don't want a giant anchor store, but we want something that is split up into lots of different things. Like, I think the biggest this could go, cause this would necessarily shrink the footprint of the commercial side. So instead of it being one giant commercial thing, you would have a row of commercial with residential behind it. So I think this is in line with the idea of shrinking the commercial size, where it's more likely to be on the principal building divided up into separate commercial spaces as opposed to a giant store. So like,
I
I
agree
think that's
with
in
you.
line.
I'm okay with this minus Article 1.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, this can't, I think to your point, this can't be passed in conjunction with Article 1. Because
Right.
the unintended consequences of this with Article 1 are ugly.
It could just be a giant sprawling thing, yeah.
Other perspectives people wanna share, or I know we're 9:30?
I don't have a problem either with the mixed-use building, I realize that that's what our town has to do to generate some income, free up some unused land. I get it, as he says, nobody's gonna come in and put in a coffee shop if that's the only thing they can build there, I get it. But I do have a concern with how many units you're going to allow them to put in. I do, I think it should be capped at a certain number. I think we all understand what the planning board and the town is trying to do. They want, whether they're gonna admit it or not, they want a small business with apartments behind it, and I think that number of apartments should be limited, or else it's going to look like the thing across from Target in Plainville. I mean, it's got a Jiffy Lube in front, and then 100 buildings, 100 apartments behind it.
The new place
There's a
with
Dunkin'.
the mannequin.
Exactly. exactly, but that's what I'm saying, it's got a couple of small businesses on the road frontage, and then what's behind it?
Yeah.
It's got a giant high-rise, which again, will only be able to be 46, and we'll have to have a pitched roof, so at least it'll look pretty, that's fine, it'll look pretty, but that's essentially what we're saying.
Yep.
We're gonna put in 100 or more apartment units. I think that that is too many. I think that the number needs to be lowered. I think if they wanna admit what they're trying to do, which is get Stop and Shop out so they can put in mixed use, then they need to assuage the town enough to say, this is what we need to do. You complain about your taxes, this is the way to help. This is what's gonna free up that space, this is what we have to do. But to get to the point that we understand this is what Norfolk's not all about, we're gonna limit the number. I think you will get a lot more people on board if you just are honest and say what your intentions are, make sure there's no loophole for this giant business to come in there. If you say what you're trying to do and people understand what they're voting for and they get it, I think you have a lot less anger on the other side.
I really question if someone's done the math on this type of development, right? Generally speaking, businesses, big, small, or otherwise, will help our tax base because they will contribute more in tax than the services that they require. Residential does the opposite. Residential typically will require more services and they will contribute to the tax base. High-density residential has a huge negative effect in that. So I kind of question this whole strategy of this mixed use. Like, I understand that we may need to do that to incent the businesses to come, right? If we don't give developers the ability to sell residential units, to your point, they're not gonna see any upside to them to build here, and we'll just be left with the moonscape. But has anyone really done the math of what happens when we put in this mixed use and we have high-density residential with, you know, another donut store who's contributing, you know, a few $1,000s to the tax base, and then we have 123, 223 residences requiring water, right? Emergency services, school, like all of those things, like, I don't see how, everything I've heard in the past few years here tells me that this is not a way to solve our tax problem here, and it's gonna create it's gonna create a worse situation. And if this is the only way that we can incent development in town, it seems like I'd rather not have development in town, because it's gonna make the overall situation worse than we're in right now. And it's an open question of, has someone done the math on this? And to take this plan to see how it, you know, whatever projections of however much commercial and residential would be developed, what impact does it actually have on the tax base and the services?
Well,
Has that been done?
Especially if it's more than one single
Right,
units,
Is that,
cause then you've got kids.
does anyone know, has that been done by the planning board? Or any board?
I heard Aaron Hunt giving numbers at one, is that who it was, on the B1 committee? He had some number about like what it currently is and what this could exceed, like move to. I don't know the number, but I feel like I've heard numbers tossed around.
No, they did a potential build out on, this is on one of the previous versions, one of the most recent previous versions, which was in their FAQs. And I'm not sure I can summarize it without having everyone read it first, but by right density is calculated, proposed, they're talking about 140, sorry,
While he's looking, it'll also increase the number of firefighters and police that you have to have on staff.
They all need radios.
Now, and I know those are minuscule things, but that's more money into the budget. You're
Not
talking
really.
about, it's based on population, you just built a 200 apartment unit between this one and Bork's, and that's 200 more residents, minimum. That's if those are all singles. If they're not all singles, let's say there's 2 or 3, you know, a couple and a kid, hypothetically, you're talking about
Right, well,
whatever
that's
that
why
is,
there's that
another
negative-
1,000 people
that's
just
why
in those
there's-
2 apartment buildings alone.
That's why there's the negative effect on,
Right, that's
on
what
the
I was
tax
saying,
base, is
yeah.
we need new wells,
So-
we need new police cruisers, we need new radios for all of it, right, we need new.
Isn't it more expensive to do the sewage and the water for residential than it would be for 1 or 2 or even 5 smaller businesses? cause you have all the residential behind it. So
Well,
again, you're
these-
creating
these
the
are all
income for
on
the
the water
builder, but I don't know that
treatment.
you're
This is-
actually
this
equating
is
it
over
for the
here.
town.
That was his point too, is that these buildings can't get as big as we might be
Yeah.
thinking, because it would strain the water system, right? So like, they
There's other
can't be,
constraints.
there's other constraints that would limit the size of these buildings, even if there's not a cap.
Yeah.
Other things are limiting it.
Well, I
They couldn't
mean,
make it
while,
infrastructure.
while David is searching, I mean, I can appreciate people questioning and wanting to understand the modeling and the projections that are done. I don't know if this rolls up to, from a town finance perspective, meaning when the planning board is considering zoning and growth models, for lack of a better word, do you guys have any exposure to that in terms of figures or numbers, or what's the net positive for the town, what's the net negative for the town? This is the ratio that we're looking for. Of course, you're Brian, you.
No, I mean, depending on the residential development, you could have an impact on schools, you know, number of kids, you know, the larger units of 2 and 3 bedrooms are more likely to have child than, you know, children than one, so that's an impact. Police and, you know, if you listen to police, they'd love to have 1 police officer per 1,000, and, you know, we're not there, and we probably can't afford to be there right now.
Well, what I think the larger question is, as we talk about incremental changes, people are asking, is there an economic model where this adds up, where the upside seems to outstrip the downsides? Meaning, if dreams come true, and if there's, I don't know, 20 potential lots, and I'm just making stuff up, if there's, let's say 20 lots in B1, and they all get populated with roughly the proportionality and the density that we're talking about, that means that it's a net positive for town services and the town tax base, et cetera, and we're having enough commercial revenue and bang for the residential draw that will suck. So, you know, the residential is kind of the bait. We're not putting up too much bait, we're gonna get benefit. Is that making sense?
Yes, I
So
mean,
is there models,
I
or are
don't
there
think there is
models?
a model, to be honest.
So I have another aspect of this that I think is interesting, and it was brought up earlier around the 15% for affordable units. If we are ever going to take control of the 40B, we need to make sure that we're building affordable units up above the threshold that allow the 40B to come in. And if this is going to be a huge number of dwellings, I'm concerned that if we're below the 10% limit, going up to 15 may not be sufficient in doing that. And if we're making a significant economic change to the commercial property to make it valuable, this is an opportunity for us to own how the affordable units are put within our town. And I just don't want to use up this resource that could have been used to get above that 10% threshold, and then not actually fix the other problems and still get to the same point where we're getting higher density and more demand for the schools without having taken advantage of an opportunity to control it ourselves.
I agree that we need to figure out a way to get to our number,
Yeah.
but doing it in town center with apartment complexes is never going to pass in this town. I mean,
But-
you wanna talk about people who are angry, you're never,
But that's part of what we could send back to planning board.
I understand that,
and
but I
say,
think you've got a
how do
better
we
chance
get
of
there?
building an apartment complex somewhere on 1A or
Yeah.
on 115 in some of that undeveloped space over there.
The
You're-
hospital.
Yeah, down by the hospital, down by Four Kicks, in that area. I can't imagine you're going to get apartment complexes that are 20%, 30% 40B
Yeah.
to pass.
David, did you have,
The estimated, this includes all of the proposed zoning changes. The estimated build-out is 190 units across the B1 zoning district. If they also provide this, which I think is unrealistic, but it's a number to keep in mind, is, if all available lots went 40B, it would be 677 units. So it's a point to be taken, because there is a proposal to do 140B, which is 60 units. And
How many 40B units would it be?
677.
We don't need that many to.
They
reach
want,
our
it's not
10%.
realistic, because
Right.
they're not gonna be able to sell them. I
It
mean,
would never be 100%.
Well, and plus
everyone past 200 is like, why am I building this?
until the new census comes out for fiscal, and due out in 2020, it'll probably come out in 21. 10% right now is somewhere around 320 units.
So
And
that's
so,
another reason, yeah, another reason, yeah.
600, a number that high is gonna be well above our 10%, and once you're at 10%, you have the opportunity
To say no.
to say no to
right.
40B developments,
Right.
so.
So anyway, so it's 190 units in the core B1 district, so.
I don't think we're gonna be getting new information. I know we've had a long discussion about this. The way that I'm looking at it is if people see some merits, but a lot of concerns in this, which have been talked about in part here, perhaps a motion to initially postpone, to then send this back. Or if people feel as though that this has benefits which outweigh the risks, then a motion to, call the vote and pass would be in order. We're open for motions.
I vote to postpone until we have information and a better explanation of what their actual intentions are.
Do we have a second?
That's an indefinite postponement, right? Just to be
Right.
sure. Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
Second.
Oh,
Okay, we have a motion and a second to indefinitely postpone. Any discussion prior to the vote? Questions? Okay. All in favor of IPing this article, please say aye.
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 All opposed say nay.
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 So 3 nays,
4 ayes.
4
One-
ayes.
One abstention.
Yep,
So the IP
IP
passes.
passes.
It's the best
I,
idea.
again, wanna make sure that I don't offend anyone at town meeting. So, I don't want anybody on advisory
Somebody's gonna be
board to be
offended.
surprised.
Somebody's gonna be
No,
offended.
I mean, the
Related
relationships that I
Sure.
have made in this room.
No, I understand.
I want to make it clear that that I will be, making I hope that they recognize I'm doing it not only as advisory, but as a citizen, but I would never agree to 675 apartment units
that's-
in downtown.
we have no-
That is not why I moved here.
We have no, that's 40B build out, which we technically have no control over, and as
Yeah.
Sue says, is unrealistic, but they put that in there as a reference point, and it's the bad reference
Well,
point.
again, I
It's
think
like
we
if
do have
don't
control over it, we have control over the zoning of where they go.
Yeah,
We
exactly.
may not have control over
Putting
someone
them in
building
this
40B
town.
in
Mhm.
town,
Mhm.
but we should have control over density and the zoning.
Which
Well,
we
you
just-
do,
which
if
we
you
just
don't
voted on.
pass these,
We have
they
done-
can't put it
So,
They can
in
do-
town center.
they
Well, let's,
over-
can we confine the discussion to the articles at hand? It's already
All right.
9:40, so, again, I'm sure we'll have a chance to chew this bone again. It's not going anywhere. Where are we at, Sue?
8.
I'm losing
8.
track.
I
Thank
don't,
you.
I don't
No.
know.
Wait,
What is it?
wait.
Someone give me
No, I
a.
think
Eight's
we're
the
at,
ones that are, 8 and
we're at
9 are
seven.
just changing.
Seven.
There
Planning
chance
board.
something is in here that's really terrible and tricky, but it's mixed up with all
Can I-
this grammatical.
Can I,
I thought
David,
7
can
is
I-
what we just
David,
voted on.
please,
I went to the planning board on Monday
Okay,
and
what
heard
did
a
you see?
presentation on this. The planning board accepted some amendments. What this essentially does is create a different review process for certain projects that come, changes to projects that come before the town. It adds in, there was a lot of concern that the building inspector by himself there's no public process involved with
Got it.
having the building inspector do this. By adding in the planning director, who essentially reports to the planning board, although I'm not entirely sure that's the exact way it works. He reports to the town administrator, but he works with the planning board. And to give the planning board some opportunity to have public meetings relative to some changes. This is what this does, is it essentially adds a second set of eyes on proposals to do site plan approval changes, et cetera, et cetera. I have no qualms with it happening. I think it makes sense.
Thank you very much for attending the meeting and providing the report there. People have questions about specific provisions or anything that David just talked about? I think that's pretty well in line with what Rich
Right.
shared.
And people who have spent a lot more time with this than I did and recommended changes were at the meeting and they made their points and the planning board adopted their points. So I'm not an expert on this kind of stuff, but someone spent some time with this, so.
Thank you.
Someone besides the planning board spent
I
some time.
watched 3.5 hours of that meeting, live streaming.
I was sitting way in the back, so you didn't
So I
see
did
me.
back.
Oh, you did?
I did.
Nice.
And I also recall that all the folks involved wanted it, including the town planner and the building commissioner, were both in favor of this change. to have eyes on each other essentially.
Right.
Additional questions or comments? If none, we're ready for motions.
One
Yes.
quick question is, do they have the capacity to do it, or will we have to augment that office because of this?
They're good.
Okay.
It's one guy, so it's really just a matter of the two of them getting together.
Yeah, but I don't know what the flow is of these types of
I
requests.
actually don't either, I'm not sure that came up, but how many times a year it happens?
It
Yeah.
really, it comes into the building department, but it will be then now shared with the planning director.
Okay, looking for motion.
A motion to approve?
Second?
Okay, we have a motion to approve Article 7, that is seconded. It's getting late. Any discussion or questions prior to the vote? Okay, all those in favor of passing Article 7, say aye.
Aye.
That's,
Any opposed? One abstention.
No, I think I can vote on this.
Yes, this is a
Site
general,
plan
Yeah, I
approval.
think I can vote.
It's
Okay,
just
so
all right.
everybody's in favor?
Everybody in
this is
favor?
outside the B one now.
Yeah.
Woo-hoo.
It passes unanimously, all
Eight.
right.
8 is only saying going from, you do the permit through zoning, and now you're gonna do the permit through planning. That's it.
I make a motion to approve this article.
Yes.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve Article 8 that has been seconded. Any questions prior to the vote? No. All in favor of passing Article 8, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. The motion to recommend approval passes. Article 9, which is our motion to update the town zoning map with the date that we all love. That hasn't happened yet.
I move to approve this article.
Second.
Wow, I'm loving this.
I
quick.
know, feel the momentum.
Whew.
Uh,
Jackie is right there for the second.
Are there any questions prior to voting for the recommendation to approve Article 9? No. All in favor of the approval of Article 9, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The ayes have it unanimously.
Same thing for number 10.
Yes. Susan approves.
Okay, so I
Motion
believe,
to approve Article 10.
Second.
okay,
All in favor?
the tag team is action. Any questions prior to vote? No. All in favor of
Aye.
Aye.
opposed? Article 10 passes
Okay.
unanimously. Which brings us, I think, to, do we have any bills?
We do not.
So we can skip 12, correct?
Well, we have number
How many have we
11.
done?
What's number 11?
We did.
Now that they rearranged the.
We did 11,
Yep.
so if you
Oh,
look
we
at
already
your
did
warrant,
11.
I put the recommendation right under it if we've done it.
Yeah, that looks
Oh,
great.
sorry.
Okay,
Okay,
that's
sorry.
okay.
And I think we passed all of them going through
Oh.
18?
number 12.
We passed, 12, we
Just
don't
put
have to
the
because we don't have any unpaid bills.
Yeah, so we're just skipping.
So we,
16.
13,
Oh.
14, 15, so we need to vote 16, that's capital.
From borrowing? I thought we did that last time, didn't we? I guess not.
We usually leave these open till the night before.
But they,
And I
specific.
love that.
They're frozen.
they had everything
You
on
love
lined
that.
up.
It's all frozen.
Love that you're moving very quick. Two things. One, we reduced the amount for the roll-off truck to 190,000 even from 196. Have some data about that if anyone wants to see it afterwards. And second, the selectmen had asked us to add $100,000 to start to address roads.
You did that, you told us about that.
I'm sorry, I can't remember who I told what to.
An additional 100,000.
Oh, so
So-
it's 200, it's 200
So it's
now.
it's 140 for Lake Street and another 100,000 for other streets.
Oh,
That was in your last presentation. That was a general comment.
Okay,
Yes, you did.
You're right, Kristen.
You did that last time.
awesome.
Terrific.
A
So-
cool 200.
We should
You didn't
postpone.
vote on it because the
Nope.
selectmen, you're right, David.
Hard
The
numbers.
reason-
Oh,
The
okay,
selectmen hadn't had a chance to talk about it.
Fine.
You knew before they did.
Thanks.
Right,
Which is why I was confused
so we have
last
hard
night.
Right.
numbers tonight, so we don't have to wait until before town meeting.
Do we have to include the totals in the motion?
Yes, we'll put the
Yes.
total amount in the motion.
But Blythe is gonna write the motions, you are gonna write the recommendation.
Understood. For tonight, in terms of passing the article, do we have to specify the amount?
No.
No. Okay. I'm entertaining a motion for Article 16.
I move to approve Article 16.
Second.
Article 16 has been moved and seconded. All in favor of approving Article 16, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
I do have a question. I think I volunteered to write up the Lake Street one, but I forgot to.
Yeah, but it's part of this, so I think you're gonna do the capital, right? Is
Okay,
that what
fine.
we chatted about, Art?
We said last time that I was going to do 12 and 14. I don't know if that was pre-numbering or post.
Yeah,
It was-
the numbering got
I
confusing.
think it's capital is typically,
So yeah, I'm happy to then do 16
I think so.
and 17.
Yeah,
There were
we
some
need
of
to
those-
go through that.
We did
by the
17.
way.
Yeah, I think we need
gotta-
to-
Unless you don't want me to.
No, we
write
do.
it, 'cause
We did because
We
we
do.
changed the numbers.
Okay.
Right,
I'm happy to give mine away.
except for Dave's. Dave's,
Okay.
Dave's good.
We're in 18 now.
So Dave, where this is built in with all of the other, the Lake Street,
Yeah.
I don't think we need to
Fine.
pull it out,
So I will write 16,
okay?
and we'll share everyone else's later. 17,
It
We
was
voted already,
passed.
we're good.
voted for that,
Yep.
good. And who's writing that up? Me?
Do you wanna wait and do that when we're done, we'll go through?
Will do.
Okay, perfect.
18, the COA revolving fund, I think we passed that, didn't we?
Nope,
Article 18, this
I'm-
establishes a revolving fund
I move to
for the
approve,
Council on Aging.
I move to approve the Article 18.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. I do recall the specifics from last time. I don't know if there's any questions.
This is just the one, if I remember, this is just the one that says they now have to pay for
No, they,
the activities.
You have a
they
class,
do.
you have to pay for.
right.
Right.
but they
Right.
set it
Class.
aside, but
Right.
they own, they set it, they set the
Right,
money
they set it
aside.
aside to use it for
Right,
stuff for
exactly.
them.
All in favor of passing Article 18, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
I'll happily write that one seems easy.
It passes unanimously, and we have a volunteer.
19 is,
Susan.
done, 20 is done,
Did we hold off on it, or did we pass 19? I think we passed it.
Done.
we passed
Okay,
it,
very good.
Done.
Yep.
20 done.
So we are at,
Although this is
No,
mean to do
21.
19.
Huh?
19 we did.
I'm doing 19. I'm doing 18,
This
sorry.
is-
no,
I'm
we
doing
did,
18.
You're
because
not
we
doing
talked
19,
about the
Susan.
fact that Susan was gonna be a no,
Yeah.
probably, and she wasn't here.
We
So
did vote
we
on it.
voted, we voted on it, and it was approved.
What?
You weren't
I,
here
Uh-huh.
I
And
did
you
offer,
thought I would be a no on what?
on
Eighteen.
OPEB.
19, you were a no.
I was a no.
So we did say you would be a no,
I
but they
want,
voted.
I want
Okay,
it to be
fine.
acknowledged publicly that I did
Yes, that's what I
attempt
remember.
to go
so-
That is
as-
absolutely
That's
true.
If I'm
That's
the only
true.
one that was voting no, I guess it doesn't really
Right.
matter.
21.
All right, and that's what I was told.
Yeah.
And I think we're good through 24, right? 24 we have to vote on?
21 doesn't have something
21.
underneath.
Oh, we don't vote on
That's
that,
hearing
that's the
reports.
reports.
Yeah, we're just passing that.
So
Which
22,
brings us into the weeds, I
23,
think,
the
24.
weeds, we're into the weeds.
I am abstaining, and because I abstained from the vote, we didn't have a quorum last time.
Okay.
So we, right,
See if
I
the
vote
town
We only have
vote to
five.
appropriate and transfer from the community.
Yes, I like this.
I vote to approve Article 24.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'd like to read it
Okay, please.
before we vote.
Yeah.
It's only
It's
controversial.
just fixing the headstones, right?
No,
this
is
this
the,
is the weeds at the lake.
Oh.
The weeds of the lake.
Oh, never mind, missed it.
Oh, this is the water chestnut
Yeah.
thing
It
that we
is.
talked about
Yes.
before?
We
It
only
is.
did do it because Arthur couldn't vote on it.
Yeah.
Right, so we didn't
Okay.
have a quorum to do
All
it.
right. I'm ready to vote.
Great.
okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of Article 24, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so
One
that's
abstain.
one abstention, the rest
I
supported.
didn't really mean to, I just was still reading.
I can write that.
It doesn't
yeah, you
matter.
All right, we'll do that at the
wanna- At
end.
the end, okay.
Okay.
You keep telling me. I don't
Okay,
listen.
so the fields is the next one that we did not vote on, and I think I sent everybody
You
Yes.
did?
Ann's
Yes.
response, so I
Thank you.
don't know if you're now comfortable to vote that. I know,
I
I
did-
did say that you spoke to them, but,
I didn't speak to him.
I mean, you
just-
attended, so
Yeah.
you could speak to it, but,
Did you send an email today?
no, I sent it yesterday.
I didn't pick up on that.
So I think
Oh, yes, I did.
if people have more questions, Dave's here for that. If not, we can move forward and, well,
So-
make
so-
it.
I'd
We're on
like to
26,
actually
correct?
address the main thing that Jonathan raised
No,
at the
25.
meeting 2 weeks ago. Is
Go ahead.
that they are not working on grass, it is solely the on.
Yeah, I think Ann answered that in the
Right,
email.
and there's some issue with lipping or something like that.
So
They're trying
the
to
only
figure it.
concern is, the answer is, well, it's only gonna take a couple days, so we're all good. But that's all weather dependent, so
Yeah,
we're not necessarily all good just because it's gonna take a couple days. So either, like in worst case scenario, I don't know, there's snow, right? That's happened before. So in worst case scenario, we have one of two options. One is we delay the start of people's ability to use these fields by the week or whatever it is to do the work. Or the work doesn't happen and then we're in limbo of the
Right.
money allocated for it and where does it go and how do we get it back and when does the work get done, et cetera. Those are the,
I think Ann made it pretty clear that and so did the chairman of the rec commission, that the AAA field is unplayable at this point. So it has to happen, even if it means delayed access, so. And I think she said that that was sort of their intention, that the other two could occur at a later date or with some minimal pre-spring work and then sort of post-spring work.
I saw the email.
The question that I think I'm confused about is that I thought you raised this at the last meeting. Is this stuff, can this stuff carry forward into next fiscal year because of the trust, or?
I'm seeing some yes.
Okay, so in other words, we can do it in the fall.
The AAA field at Freeman Kennedy must be done, and it will take 5 to 6 days, barring extreme weather.
Right.
They hope to have it done by April 7th. They may or may not be able to start it this year. That's what it says.
So I don't think they're gonna prevent people from,
No,
No,
they
like-
may or may not be started this year. They work into the second week of December. Oh, she means this year, meaning
right
Calendar year,
now,
okay.
right.
if possible, but last year they had to stop at Thanksgiving. The other fields will not be done, but we can make some sort of short-term repairs. So they're not gonna do the other fields this spring. The Babe Ruth field for a day and a half, the softball field for 4 to 5 days. The Norfolk girls softball may need to rearrange their schedule and utilize different fields.
So what she
So
was
it's only
saying
gonna
to me.
affect the Norfolk girls.
Well, the Norfolk girls softball, what Ann was explaining to me too, can use the PAL fields in Plainville because they're part of that softball league. So it's a little easier to move them than it is to move
The
all
Norfolk
of the
girls.
league winners.
Bless you. Okay, any other questions about the field restoration and maintenance?
Other things said, well, what happens if it
Yeah.
can't be done? So I think the question of, well, that's not a concern makes that not a concern, right?
It sounds like one field has to be done in the spring to even make it usable. The others could maybe be done mid to late summer when no one's really using those fields. When summer ball is over and spring ball is over, right? Doesn't summer ball end like mid-July?
Yeah, it kind of goes all the time now, but,
Well, there's gotta
But
be
it
some
gets
break.
smaller.
Right now.
right.
It gets smaller.
I was gonna say,
They use
I
less
think
They
you could
use
do
less
it
fields,
at-
so they can play it.
in August when summer ball is on the wind down, probably, is when they could do the other 2 fields. I mean, not that we get to make that decision.
I move to approve Article 25 as written.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second
Oh,
to approve
wait.
Article 25. Any
I
questions
said
for
the
the
wrong,
vote?
Article 20.
No, it's Article 25.
It's 25.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It's just kind of broken up on the page
I
awkwardly,
missed
Dave.
that, yes. Okay.
Any questions before the vote? Okay, all in favor of passing Article 25, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Say nay. Question?
Very quick point in 26 when you're ready.
Okay, Article 26, discussion. Blythe?
You've already approved it. I just want to tell you that the section 4, the last section, is different than what you voted on the last time. We corrected this and removed the references to finance director and went back to the original language of town accountant. Todd is the town accountant and the finance director. He happens to be both right now. He might, in the future, when Todd, years and years from now, when Todd isn't the finance director, we might have someone, not holding both, so we went back to the original language because we think it's more appropriate. I just want you to know that, and I don't expect it changes your vote, but I want you to be clear.
I appreciate you going with the far in the future use case
Oh.
and not be hit by a bus, so please.
It does
Beer
change the
truck,
question I
not
asked a couple
bus.
weeks ago, though. Is the town accountant also a certified procurement officer?
He happens to be.
He's if he leaves and the accountant, whoever that is, has to do that, does that position have to become a certified
We
procurement
will
officer?
double check the job description, but
We
if,
believe
if,
it.
if for
Call
by
yourself
some
an
chance it
accountant.
doesn't say that, one of the other articles we're looking to get past the town meeting would be updating all job
Yep.
descriptions, so we can
Okay,
take care of
Catch
that,
that then.
thank you.
yes.
Okay, so we voted 27. We did not vote 28 or 29. So 28 is the town clerk.
With the bylaw powers?
Correct.
Right, so Article 28
Oh, I remember this.
gives the town clerk the ability to make corrections related to numbering and organization.
No, I think this is the one that just says, like, you can't misconstrue,
Severability.
yeah, it was
Oh,
like,
the severability language.
yeah.
We're gonna put it all in one place instead of.
Instead of in the multiple
spread it all
places,
over the place. Got it.
Right.
Why did we vote on this?
What number?
You wanted to
28.
hear Susan.
Oh.
I thought we voted on this.
You'll see.
No, we didn't
Oh, we
vote on
voted,
this.
you already voted on 27, that's why I'm so
Right.
Okay, yeah,
confused.
27
I
voted
can't
on.
believe it, I missed so much.
There were two town-
Missing
there were
one
two
meeting in
town
2
clerks.
years, and I missed a lot.
Two articles submitted by the town
Maybe
clerk.
2 meetings.
One we voted on,
Two
one we did
meetings in
not.
2 years. I haven't missed.
Okay,
much.
so this is trying
That's two.
to put all the severability language in one place, as opposed to having it in many articles. Any questions about the intent or the language of the article?
I move to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve that's been seconded for
Do
Article
that first
28.
every time.
Any questions for the
The
vote?
arts job, you can't do it anymore.
All in favor of approving Article 28, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Ooh, that was a
Our volume is getting
very
more
good,
authoritative.
strong eye.
3 minutes to 10.
Article 29, street acceptances.
Blythe has an update on this.
Just wanted to tell you that since you saw the last version, Westfield Drive has come off here. This is a situation where there's a property owner in the development that hasn't gotten their permit to build their house yet and doesn't wanna release their rights quite yet. So they've said they don't wanna move forward, they wouldn't be able to sign off on the deed, so we've pulled it out of the list, for now. And when we get to this one at town meeting, you would have a separate motion for each road that comes up. We'll do them as one article, but separate motions, street by street by street for the 5. So
Because
the
Blythe
town
is
meeting,
writing the motions, so.
so the
But I
town
have to
meeting can
write
take a
the-
separate vote on each
Yep.
street.
Yep.
And there's
We
no,
should do that way.
yeah, there's no legal confusion later about how they got approved. They have their stand on their own.
Did the selectmen vote on this last night? Because it was on the agenda as one of the specific items they had to vote on, so.
Board of Select people.
Board of Select people, sorry.
I'll learn the word.
Yes, they have their public hearing on those street acceptances next week. They vote on the warrant this week, but next week is the actual public hearing for all the abutters to come in and say whatever they wanna say about it. Planning board had their public hearing on Monday at the very end of the meeting, and that triggered the selectmen that next have theirs on November 5th.
Okay, so we can collectively entertain 5 motions?
There will be 5 separate motions.
So if somebody wants to make a motion, unless there's questions, go ahead.
I'll just say, it should say select board, not board of selectmen in the article,
Submitted by the select,
right, in the actual article itself.
Oh, the Board of Selectmen.
Thank you,
Thank you.
I would
great catch.
I'm the
encourage all
chair,
to
not
read
chairman. I'm the chair, not chairman.
Departmental
I keep telling myself.
comments. I'm the charge of culture, but just saying.
Okay, any other comments? So again, I'm looking for a motion.
I move to approve the
29,
article as written. Is it going to be, it'll
Yes.
be separate articles or
Yes.
be
Separate
separate?
motions.
One article, separate
Separate
motions.
motions, right.
To approve Meeting House Road, Liberty Lane, Tailwind Circle, Saddle Ridge Way, and Silver Fox Run
Do we have a second for those
as
5
accepted
motions?
town roads.
Second.
Okay, so for the 5 motions in one vote, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposition, no abstentions.
Hip hip hooray.
Done. Field to finish
Right
line.
now, we have to figure out who's writing what.
Ah,
I've already volunteered,
And,
so I'm
and
going
just
home.
so we're clear.
Wait, I just want,
Dave and I are in agreement on this, and I know this was said so, we didn't get it past our first town meeting. I had to write a
Oh, I know,
warrant
but-
mine,
I'm
and
so
he had
sorry,
to write
so
a
did I.
warrant his, and
So
he had
did
to write
I.
a warrant his.
You did get it past you.
Let's-
did
We
not.
I
did
did
not
not
get
get
past
past
this.
I appreciate the
I
new
had no idea what I was doing. I had Stephen had to
Established
send
by
me
the chair.
examples of old ones, so I was like, you're like,
Yeah, that was
you're
what I
doing
said.
this one, Susan,
I
I was like,
actually called
what?
Steve and left him a message.
Number 8, I wrote number 8.
Okay, well, for the record, this is a kinder, gentler advisory board.
Fine, fine.
Okay.
As a millennial, I appreciate that.
There we
So,
go. Thank
No.
you.
No, ma'am.
Thank
You're
you.
good.
We're just gonna go procedural. Thank you.
Awesome.
so Dave, you are taking, let's do you first. 1 through 10, correct?
You and your big
Oh,
mouth.
man.
I just say it on
The rest of us on day 2.
You can't say that out loud, Dave, I'm sorry.
Could you?
Yeah, he's gonna take the whole
You're
first
gonna have
night.
Yeah,
Someone's gonna have to review the tape.
that's
I'm just
perfect.
gonna come for day 2 if I'm not involved in the first 10.
That's how it works, right?
What?
So,
Just show up on day 2.
You need to be there in case there's
That's a
other
good point.
motions or amendments.
No,
It's just
I also volunteered to do the
Okay.
streets, which is the last.
so
Oh,
Dave's
smart.
doing 1
First
through
and
10.
Day 4.
Art, are you gonna do budget transfers?
Arthur will do budget transfers.
Okay,
yes,
Arthur, thank you.
So what numbers are those?
So that's 11. Okay, Arthur will do that. We don't have any unpaid bills from a prior year, so no one needs to do that.
But I did volunteer.
I know you did, that was wonderful of you.
It's the
How
thought
long have you
that
been on the board? You're looking at game the system.
Okay, so, 13, 14, 15, 16, oh no, Arthur is gonna do 16 and 17.
Yep.
I'll do 13, 14.
Okay, hang on one
Oh, sorry.
second. I just wanna make sure I get this correct.
Oh,
Okay, you're gonna do 14 and 15, Mike?
13, 14, and 15, I'm happy to do.
Perfect. Mike. Okay, so that brings us to 18. Susan, do you wanna do 18? I'm kidding, I'm joking. Okay, 18, who wants to do 18?
Me.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought that was the OPEB one.
No.
Okay, Susan?
Who's doing 17?
I am.
Oh, okay,
Arthur?
sorry.
19 is the OPEB. Other post-employment
I would do it, but I
benefits.
wasn't here
He-
for the vote, so.
I volunteered to do it if no one else did, but then I thought you said he was doing it, cause the numbering is different.
Yeah, the numbering.
The numbering is all goofed
I
up.
can do it
Okay,
if
You're an
you,
animal.
Man,
Dave.
Dude, step
Dave,
up, come on,
woo-hoo.
Jonathan.
Stage fright.
Okay, who's gonna do 20, Water Enterprise Fund?
Oh, that's always a
Did
good
the
time.
water one last time.
All right, John, all you.
I'm
You
like
win.
The water
hydro-
expert.
I'm the hydro homie.
No town committee reports needs anything for 21, so 22, it's a light lift headstones from town committee,
good way to get your feet wet,
okay?
non-controversial.
very good, we just named him the water guy.
I'll do that one.
Thank you, John.
The water in the grave guy.
Install display case of town hall for historical items.
I'll do that one too.
Okay, yeah,
I'm all
that's
done.
CPC, so, do you wanna do weed control, because that's a CPC article as well?
Which one is that, the
The
Delightful.
chestnut,
chestnut?
Yeah.
the chestnuts roasting on an open fire,
Did we skip one?
no.
Which number is that one?
So that's
24.
24.
24. Oh, sure,
And then the last CPC article is athletic fields.
okay.
Thank you. Okay, Brian, we know you're off doing something
Just need some
very
strong
important.
sense.
Not really.
Um, Okay, so 26 is amend the bylaw bidding procedures from the town clerk, so this, I think it's easiest if the same person does 27 and 28.
So somebody
You're
needs to
done.
do 26, 27, and 28?
Yes, well, yes.
I'll do the streets, since you already have all the.
All right,
funds.
so you're gonna do the streets,
I'll do
Susan?
29.
Okay, so all we have left then is 26, 27, 28. Two are town clerk, and the other is the town government study committee.
I can do that one.
Okay, Kristen, you're great.
Speaking as a veteran.
Well, she was
I
on
know,
the
that's
town
why,
government
I'm
study committee
making,
for a
I'm
little
making
while.
that joking reference.
Okay.
Just to be sure
So
I had.
We just have, 27 and 28, the two town clerk ones left.
How many do you have, Mike?
Only 3.
Mike
and
has
they're
3.
really easy ones. I did
I think you
volunteer
now
for
have
12.
6.
So, okay, fine.
You'll take 27 and 28?
27.
Yes. He
Yes.
did say 7, he did say it, he muttered it.
Yes.
Okay, I
That was a
appreciate
yes, that was
that.
a
Okay,
affirmative.
so, the recommendations all need to be to me by Sunday at noon, please,
Dum dum dum.
so that I can add them into the,
Do you want them written the same way Steve wanted them written?
I called Steve and left him a message and said, can I get access to, I'm assuming, I never even bothered to try to get access to whatever that.
Base count.
Basecamp.
Yeah, but if he's gone and didn't give somebody his password, he can't add the new members, so.
No, I wanna
vote
get
to
it
not
and take it
use
from there, I
Basecamp.
wanted to get it and download it
so I
and
can
email
send
it.
everybody tomorrow, you know, basically how the recommendations.
Can we go
He-
back to doing it by email instead of Basecamp?
Absolutely.
Yes, because I don't have access to Basecamp, because Robin did that.
Back to email.
Isn't there don't we have to do a open government thing?
No,
It just has to be, it just has to,
It's a very
becomes-
short, if
it
you look
becomes-
at and I can send it to you, I can send you last year's.
Oh, I've got it. No,
Okay.
no, I'm just in terms of communicating over email versus.
no, as long as you don't communicate.
No, 'cause we're not-
If you don't start asking, it's the same thing as Basecamp, as long as you don't start asking
We're not discussing.
We're not
questions
discussing.
and
have
debating
open
issues.
discussions on a
As long as
warrant, it
somebody
becomes a
can say that.
quorum.
Right, so I'm just looking for you to individually send to me your recommendations, okay?
Sounds good?
Who would like a copy of last year's warrant emailed to them?
It's not, the spring one is not good because it doesn't contain any of the write-ups, I noticed. All it contains is our recommendation.
Well, and this warrant will probably go out tomorrow with just our recommendations. I mean, with just our votes. The advisory committee
Oh.
recommends
Where's
approval.
where's the write-up gonna appear? 'Cause it
We
didn't-
read it, it
No.
doesn't
No, it
appear, we
doesn't.
read it.
No,
It's
it
supposed
is
to be
going
in the
to
warrant.
appear, well, it doesn't have to be in the warrant. It is going to be in the warrant that are copied for town meeting.
Okay.
But where Blythe would like the warrant posted tomorrow, so therefore we're going to include our recommendations. And then by next week, that's why I'm saying Sunday at 12, by Monday at 9 AM or 8 AM, when I get into the office, Blythe and I will sit down and review your recommendations, and as long as it's a go, they'll go up on the website, and then we will make them available on all types of, town Facebook page,
Okay.
copies at the library, senior
Because we're doing
center.
a postcard for this year.
Correct.
For the fall.
Correct.
All right, just to be clear, when I'm writing Article 29,
Mm-hmm,
I am writing one article, numbered 29,
mm-hmm,
but I am saying that we are making motions to,
You're right.
for each individual
Correct.
street, and that we have recommended all of them, but they will vote on them individually.
correct,
You'll actually make the motion.
right.
Mhm.
But
You'll
Blythe
say I
will
move-
But I'm
write
talking
it.
about my write-up.
Bly-
What do you want my
correct.
write-up to
That's
say?
exactly what you just said.
That we are going to, we as a board approved them all, but we are going to present them to you individually for your approval.
Right, and what Blythe is doing this year, because this is what she did in her prior positions, she is going to write the motions for you to read. So that is something that we used
So
to
we're not
do,
reading what we're
the
writing to
chair
you?
used to do,
You're still reading it, just you're getting it from her.
right. So
Just-
the
just the motion.
recommendation and the motion are two different things,
Uh-huh, okay.
okay? So she's gonna write the motions,
Okay.
she's gonna write what she wants you to say, you know, Mr., Mrs. Dear moderator, I would like to move that blah, 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 blah. She's gonna write that very specific language. You are still gonna get up and say, the advisory committee recommended approval of this article.
After that.
We're
And
just not
here's our
giving
little
own
bleep
description.
of why we
We're not doing
recommended that.
our write-up.
right.
The $9 million transfer, that's in the recommendation. Those details were going in the recommendation.
No, they're
Or is it
going
in the motion?
They're
They're in the
doing the
motion.
motion,
Okay.
okay?
We reviewed, the board was present, or what are we, committee?
Committee.
Committee was presented with the information.
Yeah, I think what you're saying
The
is,
ones that are gonna be hard to write are the planning ones.
so what you're saying is, whereas before, we sent
We did it
you,
again.
like in
That's
years
what I'm
past, we
saying.
sent you the synopsis, right, that we then said, which is basically all we did was take this and reword it, and then we said the advisory board approves or doesn't approve or indefinitely postpones based on these reasons, is what we put below it. So you only want us to send you the recommendation, you don't want us to send you a
'Cause-
reworded version of this?
Right,
Okay, got it.
But for
Just
instance,
checking.
on the planning board ones where we had split votes, I'm gonna say in the recommendation that the board was not unanimous on this, there were concerns raised around X, Y, and Z.
You can mention pros or cons.
Yeah,
Right.
right, so
Right.
for the ones that don't get a unanimous vote, it becomes, you basically acknowledge that we weren't
right.
100%.
Okay.
And that Susan was very opposed.
I'm
Thank you.
not gonna name it, it's up to you. to name it.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Okay, all say aye? Aye. No nays. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.